The 9-yang immortal flame had arrived. Just as I expected, the baby girl floating in the sky lost control. The power of the heavenly yang was too much for her. She plummeted toward the ground, a trail of dark red blood spraying from her lips. Li Hongtian blurred into motion, catching her midair and cradling her firmly in his arms. "Ancestral Empress, are you all right?" he whispered urgently. "Ancestral Empress?" In his panic, the title slipped out. Luckily, we were high up and his voice was low. None of the other clansmen heard him. Li Chenxi's tiny face went from pale to flushed with rage. To her, being called Ancestral Empress right now felt like a slap in the face. The more he said it, the angrier she got. She had prepared for 100 lifetimes. She had waited 100,000 years in the cycle of reincarnation. Yet, she couldn't even compete with a baby boy. She felt like her entire existence had been a waste. Seeing the 9-yang blessing, a phenomenon that hadn't appeared in eons, had shattered her mental state. She had nearly succumbed to internal demons. She managed to finish fusing the heavenly yang energy, but her body was badly damaged. She coughed up another mouthful of blood, her eyes rolled back, and she fainted from pure frustration. Li Hongtian sighed, shaking his head. It really was a case of bad timing. If she had been born a few years later, she wouldn't have had to face a freak of nature like me. Then again, if she had waited, she probably wouldn't have stood a chance anyway. I felt bad for her, but I was busy. Above them, I was encased in a searing sphere of light. The 9-yang energy forced its way through my 36,000 pores, flooding my veins. Every cell in my body felt like it was melting. If an ordinary person had tried to absorb this much solar fire, they would have been turned to ash instantly. Even my sister, with her red earth physique, couldn't handle this level of power. But I was different. I possessed the eternal, immortal demon body. My physical form was terrifyingly robust. The solar fire seeped into my bones, turning me into a human furnace. The pain was excruciating, even for me. But I didn't make a sound. I had spent 1,000 years sweeping floors in the underworld. My willpower wasn't something a little heat could break. I gritted my teeth and endured. As the fire refined my body, I began to glow like red-hot iron. Every organ and every cell was being forged to perfection. It took nearly an hour for the light surrounding me to fade. Inside my left dantian, a golden flame flickered. I felt its aura, and my heart leaped with joy. This was the 9-yang immortal flame. I was barely a month old, and I already controlled the power of an immortal fire. This was incredible. Usually, someone like Li Chenxi would hope for a heavenly yang seed. That's just a spark that needs years of nurturing and feeding to become a true flame. But the 9-yang blessing was different. It didn't give me a seed. It gave me the completed flame. This fire was formed by the fusion of 9 suns. It was 100 times stronger than a standard immortal flame. It could burn through anything. From now on, if anyone dared to mess with me, I could just toss a fireball and end the problem. The flame was the biggest prize of the ceremony, but the physical tempering was a close second. My body was now strong beyond belief. After a few more moments, the 8 extra suns vanished from the sky. I drifted back down to the sacrificial altar. The Li clan disciples went wild. They raised their fists, chanting in unison, "Godchild, Godchild." They had witnessed a miracle. They knew that in the near future, I would become the strongest being in heaven and earth, leading the family into a new golden age. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. I was standing in a spacious courtyard filled with blooming flowers and colorful butterflies. I looked at the little girl standing next to me near the bamboo pavilion. I had grown into a handsome young boy with large, bright eyes. My sister, Li Chenxi, was fair-skinned with chubby, adorable cheeks. I reached out my hand, and a gray butterfly landed on my palm. "Sister, look at the patterns on this butterfly's back. It looks like hemp thread." I gave it a name. I held the butterfly out to her. "I call it the Yamadi. Catchy, right?" "Boring," she snapped, shoving my hand away. The butterfly took fright and fluttered off. "Hey, Yamadi, don't fly away," I called out. I was honestly confused. Weren't little girls supposed to like flowers and butterflies? My sister was different. Even at this age, she only cared about swords and spears. I wondered who would ever be brave enough to marry her when she grew up. We were 3 years old now, able to run, jump, and even climb onto the roof to fetch a ball. It was finally time to start our official cultivation. I was excited. I wanted to see exactly how fast the eternal immortal demon body could progress. Heavy footsteps echoed across the courtyard. Li Hongtian, tall and imposing, walked over to us. "Father," I said, looking up at him. "Are we going to start training now? You promised we'd start when we turned 3. He looked down at us and shook his head. "Cultivation can wait. There is something much more important we need to do first." Li Hongtian knelt down and gently rubbed my head. Both of us had started speaking early, showing intelligence far beyond our years. My sister's wit was a surprise to everyone, but mine was expected. After all, I was 100,000-year-old soul in a toddler's body. Our family simply attributed our genius to our godly physiques. It made sense. If you have the body of a god, you should have the brain of one too. My father picked us both up, one in each arm, and began walking. The Li family estate was massive, practically the size of a city. He carried us to a cultivation field that spanned 1,000 acres. In the center stood a stone monument, 300 feet tall, towering over everything. Carved into the stone in bold, ancient characters were the words, "The Eternal Godly Physique Ranking." "You are 3 years old now," my father said, setting us down in front of the monolith. "That is the minimum age required to face the trial. Touch this stone and see if you can claim your place on the Eternal Godly Ranking." I looked up at the massive slab. This wasn't just a local list. The Eternal Godly Ranking was a legendary trial known throughout the cultivation world. It tested physical strength, spiritual talent, and the power of one's physique. If you made the cut, you were granted a heaven-defying opportunity to soar to greatness. I was already excited. With my eternal immortal demon body, I was certain I could take the top spot. The ranking took everything into account. My sister, Li Chinsi, had the primordial earth womb and the supreme earth bone. The stone would combine those two treasures to judge her overall power. The more trump cards you had, the higher you climbed. I squinted at the small text at the bottom of the list. The current number 1 was a man named Yi Tianfan, who possessed the desolate ancient holy body and a supreme bone. Second was Jun Wuming, with the holy body womb. Third was Ji Buhui, who held a supreme sword bone. The list only recorded the top 100 people across all the realms. It was a brutal competition. Trillions of cultivators from the long-life realm and countless other worlds fought for these 100 spots. Once you made the list, you stayed for 10,000 years before your name was automatically removed. If someone new surpassed the 100th person, that person was simply kicked off. I recognized the name Yi Tianfan. In my past life, I had seen these monuments in many different places. Making it to the top meant you were the strongest among trillions. But the real prize wasn't just fame. It was the qualification to enter the eternal god realm. That place was a graveyard of ancient gods, filled with treasures and opportunities that could make someone the master of the 3 realms. I looked at the base of the stone, searching for Dao luck. With my system, I could see the hidden flow of energy. Usually, the older an object was, the thicker its Dao luck. This stone had stood for millions of years, yet it was empty. I realized the luck wasn't here. It was stored within the eternal god realm itself. That confirmed it. I definitely had to go there. I stepped toward the stone to start the test, but a hand grabbed my arm. Li Chinsi yanked me back, her face determined. "I'm the sister. I go first," she shouted. I rolled my eyes. "What does it matter? You're just going to end up in second place anyway. My physique is way stronger than yours." She gritted her teeth, looking like she wanted to bite me. "I want to sit in the number 1 spot first." I knew what she was thinking. When you first joined the ranking, you received a reward called the Eternal God Pool. The quality of the reward depended on your rank at that moment. If I went first, I'd take number 1, and she'd be stuck with the second place reward. But if she went first, she could temporarily claim the top spot and get the best reward before I inevitably knocked her down. "No way," I said, turning back to the stone. "I'm the brother. I go first." She tried to pull me back, but I didn't budge. I was only 3, but my strength was already monstrous. I kept walking, dragging her along across the dirt like she weighed nothing. "Wait, Li Heng," she yelled, desperate. "I'll give you a celestial deer leg if you let me go first." I stopped instantly. Celestial deer were as rare as dragons or phoenixes. Their meat was incredibly tender and packed with spiritual energy. I had tasted a small piece at our birthday banquet, and I'd been craving it ever since. Really? I asked, my mouth already watering. She reached into her spatial ring and pulled out a 3-meter-long deer leg. It was massive. This had to be from a deer that had cultivated for thousands of years. Eating this wouldn't just be delicious. It would nourish my body and boost my cultivation. Where did you get something this big? I asked, staring at the meat with glowing eyes. Father gave it to me, she said, glancing back at the tall man watching us. I nodded, satisfied. Fine. For the sake of the meat, you can go first. It didn't matter to me. She could enjoy the view from the top for a few minutes. Once she was done, I was going to take that #1 spot for myself anyway. I reached out and touched the 3-meter-long deer leg. With a quick thought, I stored it inside my spatial ring. My father, Li Hongtian, had given me this ring, and it was massive inside, large enough to fit a 300-meter mountain. The Li family certainly didn't lack resources. Li Qinxi let out a long sigh of relief. Over the last 3 years, she had realized I was a bottomless pit when it came to food. If there was a delicacy involved, I couldn't be moved. To her, giving up a celestial deer leg was a small price to pay to secure the top spot on the eternal god physique ranking. Even if she only held the position for a moment, she would still claim the first-place reward. As she walked toward the eternal stone tablet, I trotted over to my father. I looked up at him, feeling a bit cheated. Dad, I want celestial deer meat too, I grumbled. I was genuinely surprised the family had managed to get some. Transporting something like that down from the desolate ancient realm was incredibly expensive. The cost of the trip alone far outweighed the value of the meat. My father looked at me, his expression turning awkward. The truth was, he hadn't given that meat to Li Qinxi. She had brought it with her through the primordial chaos pagoda, a powerful artifact fused to her soul that survived through her many reincarnations. Whatever treasures she pulled out, she just claimed the family gave them to her to avoid suspicion. Li Hongtian knelt down and pinched my cheek gently. Hunger, I'll get you some, I promise. I'll make sure you get even better things than your sister in secret, okay? I nodded, satisfied for now. He had been secretly feeding me treasures from the family's private vault since I was born, so I knew he'd deliver. We were at the training grounds now, right next to the massive stone tablet. Hundreds of young disciples were practicing nearby, and when they saw the clan leader bringing the godson and goddaughter for testing, they swarmed us. A massive crowd formed instantly. The godson and goddaughter are finally testing their physiques, someone shouted. There's no doubt about it, another added. The godson is going to hit the top of the list. Our Li family is finally going to dominate the rankings. Climbing the eternal god physique ranking was nearly impossible. You had to compete against trillions of people across history. Even a clan as old as ours, with a 100,000-year legacy, had only ever produced a handful of people who made the list. Li Qinxi stepped up to the tablet. A soft glow radiated from her hand as she pressed it against the cold stone. The tablet vibrated violently. A terrifying aura erupted, shooting a beam of light straight into the clouds. The sky transformed, revealing a vision that made everyone gasp. Endless purple mist swirled in the heavens, nurturing a divine body that radiated pure power. Beside the body floated a golden bone engraved with ancient, complex patterns. Just looking at it felt like staring into the face of total destruction. My God, look at that purple mist, a disciple screamed. And that bone. The power is overwhelming. The tablet had revealed both of Li Qinxi's hidden physiques. A streak of energy shot from the stone into her forehead, and a booming, ancient voice echoed in her mind. You have dominated the ages and reached the top of the eternal god physique ranking. Your name shall be carved at the very summit. Wait, Li Qinxi countered in her mind. Hide my name. Use the alias Musi. She knew her real name was too famous. 10,000 years ago, the name Li Qinxi made even the most powerful demons tremble. If it appeared now, every old monster in the world would come hunting for her. She was too weak to protect herself yet. As you wish. The stone tablet shook. Golden letters slowly formed at the very top of the list. Rank 1, Musi, Primordial Chaos Womb, Supreme Earth Bone. The previous top names all shifted down one spot. The world shook. There were 100,000 of these tablets scattered across the 3 realms, and at that exact moment, every single one of them displayed the same vision of purple mist and golden bone. Across the 3 realms, powerful sects and ancient clans went into a frenzy. Is that the primordial chaos womb? And that bone, it's even stronger than a standard supreme bone. 2 legendary treasures in one person? This Musi is going to defy the heavens. While the world marveled, the news reached the desolate ancient realm, the highest heaven. In the forbidden grounds of the Yi clan, a man with disheveled hair opened eyes that glowed with terrifying light. This was Yi Tianfan, the man who had just been knocked down to second place. Who dares take my spot? He hissed. He stared at the vision of the supreme earth bone. Even he was jealous. If he could rip that bone out and put it in his own body, his strength would skyrocket. Musi, that's a fake name, he growled. Find them. I don't care what world they are in. Find them immediately. In the cruel reality of the 3 realms, being a genius was a death sentence if you didn't have the power to back it up. If a clan couldn't recruit you, they would destroy you. And my sister had just put a massive target on her back. My family, the Li clan, has been a dominant force for 100,000 years. Our influence is terrifying, and deep within our back garden lies a restricted area called the Eternal Manor. Hundreds of eternal tablets stand there like a forest of stone. It's rare for any clan to possess so many, and most of my kin didn't understand why we wasted such precious land on them. After all, getting your name on the Eternal God rankings is nearly impossible. Suddenly, one of the tablets hummed. A terrifying aura flared as an old man appeared instantly before the stone. His eyes locked onto the top line. Primordial Chaos Womb, Supreme Earth Bone. When he saw the name Musi, his body shook. Tears streamed down his face, and his voice cracked with emotion. 10,000 years. Ancestor, you've finally returned. This was the Li clan's oldest ancestor, Old Piao Miao. He was one of the few who knew my sister, Empress Chen Shi, had entered the cycle of reincarnation. She had told him that after 100 lives, she would return with a peerless talent and use a fake name, Musi, to hide her identity. The old man laughed toward the heavens. He knew her talent was enough to suppress the entire era. Even the primordial chaos womb alone could crush Yi Tianfan. But with the supreme earth bone added on, she was truly the #1 genius in history. He pulled a purple jade gourd from his waist and took a massive gulp of wine, his heart soaring. Back at the Eternal God Pond, my father, Li Hongtian, stared at a glowing red light. This was the highest grade God Pond, a key to the core of the Eternal God domain where endless opportunities were hidden. To get in, you had to rank on the tablets. The higher the rank, the better the reward. My sister had rushed to go first specifically to snatch this top prize, knowing there was only one red pond available. After she finished her test, she walked back to my father's side. I nudged her with a smirk. Hey, little sister, how does it feel to be #1? Should I wait until tomorrow to test, so you can enjoy the spotlight for a full day? Boring, she snapped, turning her head away. She was annoyed, but internally, she was confident. She figured I might have a powerful physique, but the God rankings had many categories. She had 100 lifetimes of combat experience and secret techniques. She was sure that when it came to the strength ranking or the cultivation ranking, a newborn brat like me couldn't possibly compete. Since you aren't asking for mercy, it's my turn, I said. I walked up to the stone tablet and pressed my small hand against the cold surface. My family held their breath. The tablet didn't just shake, it roared. The entire Li clan estate trembled. A pillar of terrifying energy shot into the sky, tearing through the clouds to reveal a vision of a void-like world. In the darkness, countless immortal emperors and demon gods appeared, standing shoulder to shoulder in an endless sea of power. Then, they all knelt. In the center of this vision stood a god 10,000 feet tall. His left side glowed with golden light, while his right side was wreathed in abyssal darkness. With a single wave of his arm, the thousands of immortals and demons prostrated themselves in worship. My family stood frozen, faces pale with shock. This was the power of the eternal immortal demon physique, the ruler of all gods and demons. Compared to this, my sister's vision, while strong, felt small. A voice echoed directly into my mind from the tablet. You stand alone across the ages. You are the head of the eternal physiques. State your name for the tablet. Do you wish to remain anonymous? I thought of my sister's fake name. She was number 1, but no one knew who she was. I looked up, my eyes flashing with golden light. I had endured 1,000 years in the darkness of the underworld for this chance. I wanted my name to be known by every living soul. My name is Li Hong, I declared. The tablet flared. At the very top, above, Musi, new words burned into the stone. Rank 1. Li Hong, eternal immortal demon physique. The Li clan erupted. Men cheered and pumped their fists into the air. This wasn't just a victory, it was a declaration of dominance. Unlike my sister's hidden identity, my name was there for the whole world to see. Across the 3,000 worlds, every eternal tablet mirrored the vision. Cultivators everywhere were paralyzed with fear. The immortal demon physique was rumored to be the strongest of the 36,000 legendary bodies. Who was Li Hong? People whispered in awe. He just appeared out of nowhere and crushed Musi. Back in the desolate ancient realm, Yi Tianfan had just sat down to meditate when the new vision shook his sanctuary. He stared at the name Li Hong, his face twisting. Even as a great emperor, he felt a chill down his spine. The era had changed, and a new monster had arrived. The sight of my name at the top of the tablet stunned everyone, even those who had seen the most powerful divine physiques in history. The legends said that after the ancient era, the immortal demon physique had vanished forever. Why was it appearing now? A chilling thought spread through the crowds. Was the Great Calamity truly coming? The Great Calamity was a disaster for all cultivators. Even great emperors weren't safe. In the ancient past, countless gods and demons who could shake the heavens fell during that time. Today, the 3 worlds were much weaker than they were back then. If the calamity returned, no one would survive. Deep within a restricted, forbidden land, a middle-aged man appeared. This was Yi Zufeng, the current head of the Yi clan. He knelt and bowed low before a secluded sanctuary. Inside, Yi Di, the great emperor of the Yi family, frowned. Do you know where this Li Heng came from? He asked, his voice heavy. I don't know for sure, Yi Zufeng replied cautiously, keeping his head down. But I did some digging recently. In the longevity realm, the Li clan has a godchild. It's possible he possesses an eternal physique. The Yi clan's influence reached across all 3,000 worlds. They had eyes and ears everywhere. It didn't take long for news to travel. Yi Di narrowed his eyes, his gaze as sharp as a blade. The Li clan of the longevity realm. Li Hong. Send men immediately. Investigate everything. As you command, Yi Zufeng whispered before vanishing. Yi Di tapped his fingers on his desk, the rhythmic thud-thud-thud echoing in the quiet room. For 100,000 years, the Li clan had been acting strange, hiding their movements. Was it all for this one boy? The Li clan was an ancient clan, powerful and respected, but the Yi clan was an ancient imperial family, a lineage that had lasted over 1,000,000 years. Still, the Li clan had their own great emperors. Moving against them would be costly. Yi Di found himself growing curious. He wanted to know exactly what they were plotting. Meanwhile, at the Li clan's eternal manor, old ancestor Piao Miao was sitting by the stone tablet. He leaned against the rock, laughing as he chugged wine from a jade gourd. The liquid spilled down his chin and onto his clothes, but he didn't care. He hadn't been this happy in ages. Suddenly, the ground shook. The tablet vibrated violently, and a terrifying aura shot into the sky, twisting the clouds into strange shapes. The rankings were changing again. Piao Miao's hand froze. His gourd tilted, and the precious wine poured onto the dirt like wasted pearls. Normally, he would have cried over losing such a treasure, but his eyes were glued to the tablet. The number 1 spot on the divine physique rank had changed owners. Again, Musi was only at the top for an hour, he stammered. It was the shortest reign in history. He had assumed Musi would stay at number 1 for 10,000 years. No one should have been able to touch her. Eternal immortal demon physique. Li Hong, he read aloud. He suddenly remembered something. When Musi was born, she had a twin brother. His name was Li Hong. Communicating between the upper realms and the lower worlds was difficult and expensive. The Li clan only used the realm stones for emergencies. They had checked in once when Muzi was born, and the message mentioned a boy named Li Heng with decent talent. Piao Miao stared at the tablet. Decent, he muttered. This wasn't decent. This was monstrous. Muzi had prepared for 100,000 years to take that spot, and this newborn baby had just crushed her. If the world found out, the Li clan would be the laughingstock of the heavens. I need to use the realm stone, he decided, heading toward the forbidden zone. I have to know if this Li Heng is our Li Heng. There are many people with that name. If this is a misunderstanding, it'll be embarrassing. Back in the longevity realm, at the Li clan's training grounds, the air hummed. A pillar of 7-colored light descended from the heavens, wrapping around me. Li Chenxi's eyes widened. 7 colors? She whispered. She knew that eternal rewards usually came in 5 colors: white, silver, gold, purple, and red. White was for the bottom ranks, and red was for the top 10. No one had ever heard of a 7-colored light. It meant the reward I was receiving was far beyond anything a red rank could offer. She realized then that my physique wasn't just number 1. It had reached the eternal limit. The previous rank ones were just the strongest of their time. I had reached the absolute peak of what was possible. Li Chenxi watched me, her mind racing. She had spent 100,000 years preparing to reach the top and unlock a secret treasure in the eternal domain that could make her a great emperor. Now, this 7-colored pool had appeared. It changed everything. She realized she needed to have a very serious talk with her little brother. I stood still, my eyes closed. As the light merged into my body, a new object appeared in my mind. It was a shimmering, 7-colored medallion covered in mysterious runes. I recognized it immediately. During my time signing in, I had obtained ancient books that described the eternal pools in detail. Most people only knew about the 5 colors, but the books mentioned a 6th, the 7-colored pool. It could only be obtained by reaching the absolute limit of a physique. This medallion was a key to a gate within the divine realm, holding a treasure that no other pool could provide. As I gripped the medallion in my mind, a mechanical voice rang out. Ding! Congratulations on reaching the eternal limit. You have unlocked the eternal sign-in mode. My eyes snapped open, flashing with excitement. The system explained that the more eternal chi I gathered, the higher my sign-in multiplier would become. This meant that from now on, every time I signed in, my rewards wouldn't just be good, they would be multiplied. This new multiplier was a game changer. Back in the underworld, I could only sign in at a location once and receive a single reward. Now, with the eternal sign-in mode, I could get so much more. But there was a catch. I needed something called eternal chi. I had never heard of it before, but the name suggested a connection to the eternal monolith. I shifted my focus back to reality and stared at the massive stone pillar. I scanned it from bottom to top, searching for any sign of this mysterious energy. Nothing. I thought maybe it was like the luck I saw during system sign-ins, invisible to the naked eye unless you had the system's help. I even walked in a full circle around the monolith, trying to feel a spark of power, but there was nothing special about the air here. If the eternal chi wasn't at the monolith, it had to be inside the eternal domain itself. That place was vast, a realm where gods once lived. It made sense that such energy would exist there. I had the 7-colored medallion now, which meant I could enter, but there were strict rules. Each pool could only be used once, and there was a time limit for every visit. I had to be smart. I needed to plan the perfect moment to go in. Later that afternoon, the sun was scorching. The air felt heavy and still. In a quiet bamboo pavilion, Li Chenxi sat on a bench, staring blankly at the lotus flowers in the pond. My father, Li Hongtian, stood beside her. He had cast an invisible barrier around the pavilion to block out any eavesdroppers. Even inside our own clan, they were being incredibly cautious. Ancestor, when do you plan to enter the eternal domain? My father asked. In 3 days, Chenxi replied. My father looked worried. 3 days? Isn't that too dangerous? I've heard there are demonic beasts inside. That realm belonged to the gods, and while they are gone, the beasts remain. You are, well, you're currently a 3-year-old child. You haven't even started your formal cultivation yet. Chenxi didn't blink. She had been there in her past life. She knew the secrets. The beasts there don't attack humans unprovoked, she explained calmly. There are ancient restrictions. As long as you keep your distance and don't show hostility, you're safe. They only become enemies if you attack them first. My father let out a long breath, relieved. He knew better than to argue with a reincarnated empress. She wouldn't take risks she couldn't handle. Then, his thoughts turned to me. Hunger has a pool too. I wonder what opportunities he'll find. I've never even heard of a 7-colored pool. Just based on the color, it has to be rarer than yours. Chenxi's eyes narrowed slightly. The Eternal Domain has many hidden treasuries. With his medallion, he might be able to reach the very core of the realm. I'm curious about that pool myself. My main goal is to find the foundation to become an eternal great emperor, and his pool might be the key. I've decided. I'm going into the domain with Li Hong. My father gasped. What? If he goes now, won't he be in danger? I was planning to wait until he was 18 and had some real strength before letting him explore. I'll be with him, Chenxi said firmly. It won't be a problem. Besides, each pool is a one-time use. If he goes in alone and wanders into a trap, he'll waste it. If we go together, we can look out for each other. My father sighed, realizing he couldn't change her mind. Fine, just be careful. Our courtyard had 3 rooms, and even though we were toddlers, Chenxi and I lived in separate quarters. That was her idea, of course. A little while later, my door creaked open. Chenxi walked in and was immediately hit by the mouth-watering scent of roasted meat. I was sitting at a wooden table by the window, a large platter of fresh venison in front of me. I grabbed a huge chunk and took a massive bite. It was delicious. Chenxi looked at me coldly and let out a small huff. All you do is eat. How do you even have teeth yet? I raised an eyebrow, chewing happily. I spent 1,000 years as a soul reaper in the underworld. I forgot what food even tasted like. I spent my first 2 years here toothless, so now that my baby teeth are in, I'm making up for lost time. In 3 days, you're coming with me to the Eternal Domain, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. I popped another piece of meat into my mouth. Why should I go with you? You're just a kid. Go play by yourself. It's dangerous alone, she said, trying to sound like she was coaxing a toddler, completely ignoring the fact that she looked exactly my age. Dangerous for you, maybe, I teased, looking her up and down with mock pity. I'm older than you, she snapped, putting on her big sister act. I'll think about it, I said, not wanting to give in too easily. Are you just scared to go alone? Do you need your big brother to protect you? I stuffed more venison into my mouth. As the meat hit my stomach, a wave of warmth surged through my veins. This wasn't normal meat. It was packed with spiritual energy. Eating this regularly would make a body incredibly strong over time. It's just safer if there are 2 of us, Chenxi insisted, changing her tactic. I thought about it. She was right, in a way. She was my sister, and even if she was a reincarnated powerhouse, she was currently in a tiny, fragile body. If things got hairy, I'd have to be the one to step up. Fine, I said, acting like I was doing her a huge favor. Since you're begging, I'll go. I'll keep you safe. But you have to be on your best behavior and stay close. Chenxi snorted. She definitely hadn't been begging, but she didn't argue. As long as I agreed, she was happy. 3 days from now, at the hour of the tiger. Come find me. We enter the domain then. She turned and left without another word. I finished the rest of the venison, licked my fingers, and shut the doors and windows. I sat down on a green meditation cushion. Usually, kids in this world don't start cultivating until they are 12. The elite clans might start their kids at 7 or 8 using expensive medicinal baths. But we were different. We had divine physiques. My father wanted us to start at age 3 to be safe. The first stage was chi condensation, learning to sense the energy of heaven and earth and draw it into the body. It strengthens the physical form and allows for basic techniques. I closed my eyes and focused inward. My body was a masterpiece of contradiction. The left side was immortal, the right side was demon. I could wield holy light and abyssal darkness. If I could fuse them, my power would be limitless. But to get there, I had to walk both paths at once. It was time to begin. A normal cultivator only needs to absorb enough spiritual chi to reach the peak of the chi condensation stage. After that, they break through to the body tempering realm. But I wasn't normal. Since I possessed the eternal immortal demon physique, absorbing spiritual chi wasn't enough. I had to absorb demon chi as well. Both sides had to reach the peak before I could advance. If one side lagged behind, I was stuck. I flipped my wrist, and a pitch-black box appeared in my palm. Inside was a dark demon chi pill. It was packed with pure, concentrated demonic energy. For a regular demon cultivator, a single pill like this could take them from the first level of chi condensation all the way to the peak. In this realm, there are 9 levels, followed by a final peak stage. I picked up the pill, it was about the size of a thumb, and tossed it into my mouth. The black energy exploded in my chest and surged toward the right side of my body. But something was wrong. For a normal cultivator, this would have been a flood. For me, it was like throwing a pebble into a deep pond. It made a small splash, but the water level didn't rise at all. The effect was incredibly weak. I thought one pill would at least get me to the second level, but it barely moved the needle. I needed a massive amount of energy to hit the tipping point. I didn't panic. I flipped my wrist again, and a 3-foot-long wooden crate slammed onto the floor. It was packed with 1,000 demon chi pills. Back when I was signing in at the underworld, these things were common. I used to collect them like junk while I was sweeping the floors. I grabbed a handful, 7 or 8 pills at once, and shoved them into my mouth. I chewed them down, feeling the power rush to my right side. Still, I was nowhere near a breakthrough. I started grabbing them by the fistful, stuffing them into my face like I was eating snacks. If anyone saw me, they'd think I was eating jelly beans, not high-level cultivation pills. By the time I'd finished 100 pills, I finally felt a swell of power. I held my breath, focused my mind, and pushed the energy hard. Boom. Level 2. I let out a long breath. I hadn't realized my demon body would be such a bottomless pit. A normal cultivator needs 1 pill for the whole realm. I needed 100 just for 1 step. The amount of energy I could store was easily 1,000 times greater than a normal person's. It was expensive, but it meant I'd be tens of thousands of times stronger in the long run. I kept going and swallowed another 150 pills. Boom. Level 3. 200 more pills. Boom. Level 4. 250 pills. Boom. Level 5. 300 pills. Boom. Level 6. The first crate was empty. I didn't care. I had plenty more. In the grand scheme of what I'd collected, this was just a drop in the bucket. By the time I finished the first 1,000 pills, the sun was already high in the sky the next morning. A beam of light cut through the window, but I didn't leave the room. I didn't feel tired at all. In fact, as my body grew stronger, I felt more refreshed than ever. I summoned a new, larger black crate. When the lid popped open, a thick, suffocating cloud of demon chi rolled out. These were great demon chi pills. Each one was the size of an egg and 10 times more potent than the ones I'd just finished. A normal chi condensation cultivator would literally explode if they tried to eat one of these. You usually had to be at the body tempering stage just to survive the dose. I picked one up and took a massive bite. The energy burned down my throat. Just one mouthful was stronger than several of the old pills combined. I started munching on them like they were apples. 30 pills later, my internal energy surged again. Asterisk boom, 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 asterisk. I hit level 7, then 8, then 9. The sun set in the west and rose again in the east. Finally, the room trembled as black light erupted from the right side of my body. I had reached the peak of chi condensation. I stood up and stretched. My bones popped and cracked like thunder. My blood flow and muscle density felt 100 times stronger than before. I looked at my right hand and clenched it into a fist. The raw power hidden in this tiny body was terrifying. But I knew the peak wasn't the end. To truly become a god-tier powerhouse, I had to compress and refine that energy. In ancient times, the greatest masters would refine their chi over and over. There was even a legendary stone tablet called the Eternal God Rank. To even get your name on it, you had to refine your energy at least 15 times. I decided to hold off on refining for a moment. My demon side was ready, but my immortal side was still empty. I tucked the remaining great demon chi pills away and pulled out a red sandalwood box. Inside were over 1,000 profound spirit pills. These were the immortal equivalent of what I'd just taken. In the Li clan, a talented disciple might get one of these a year. If my relatives saw me sitting on a pile of 1,000, they'd probably have a heart attack or try to rob me. I didn't waste time. I grabbed a handful and started crunching them down like candy. 7 or 8 pills hit my stomach, and the left side of my body began to glow with a pure, holy light. Boom! Level 2. I kept eating, clearing the crate in record time. By the time the sun hit the courtyard again, the immortal side of my body had already surged to level 6. I was just getting started. The morning chill began to fade as the sun climbed higher. Li Chinsi stood in the courtyard, her arms crossed, waiting in silence. She had been standing there for a full hour. I still hadn't come out. She knew me as a punctual person, but I was currently standing her up. Knock, knock, knock. She pounded on my door with heavy thuds. A moment later, she heard me shuffling around inside. Who is it? I called out, my voice clear. Little sister? What are you doing here so early? I had just finished my cultivation session. I didn't feel tired at all. In fact, I felt incredible. You actually forgot our agreement? Li Chinsi's face was cold as she glared at me. I shrugged, acting like it was no big deal. I just slept a bit too much. Let's head out now. Truth was, I had been having such a blast eating those pills and leveling up that the eternal god domain had completely slipped my mind. She nodded and pulled out a red divine medallion. To enter that vast, boundless world, we had to activate our medallions together. Even then, we would only be allowed to explore a small, specific area. Since we both held spots on the divine physique rank, the medallions would drop us into the same coordinate. We each pricked a finger and let a drop of blood fall onto the stones. A strange, mystical force surged outward, pulling us from the room. The world blurred, then snapped back into focus. We were standing in a lush forest. The vegetation was vibrant, pulsing with spiritual energy. A small stream flowed down the mountainside nearby, the water sparkling like liquid gemstones. I took a deep breath. My mind cleared instantly. My spirit felt 10 times stronger. This place was incredible. The air itself was thick with spiritual essence. Even if a regular person just sat here for 3 days without practicing a single martial art, their physical constitution would skyrocket. Back when I absorbed the spirit realm fetus, it gave off a silvery green mist that boosted my strength. The air here was 7 or 8 times more potent than that mist. If someone lived here permanently, they'd become a powerhouse just by breathing. Unfortunately, the medallions only gave us 3 days before we'd be kicked back to reality. I scanned the horizon. My eyes caught something strange. On a nearby peak, a golden light was shimmering. It was blindingly bright. What is that? I wondered. Could it be related to Eternal Chi? I had unlocked the Eternal Sign-In mode earlier. If I could find Eternal Chi, I could upgrade my rewards even further. I needed to get up there and test my theory. Little sister, do you see that golden light on the mountain? I asked, pointing toward the summit. Li Chinsi looked where I was pointing. She saw the deep blue sky and the rocky cliffs, but nothing else. Are you seeing stars? There's no light there. My pupils drifted. I was right. Only I could see it. The mountain is high, I said. It's a good spot to scout the area. Let's go up. She agreed. We needed to get our bearings anyway. Each rank on the divine medallion only allowed access to a 10-mile radius, so we had to make every move count. I followed her, hoping that golden glow was exactly what I thought it was. The mountain wasn't very high, maybe 1,000 feet. Being kids, we moved fast and reached the top quickly. As we crested the ridge, a plant glowing with a fierce red light caught our eyes. It looked like a massive spirit mushroom, about 3 feet wide, bright red and shimmering as if it were burning in an invisible fire. Li Chinsi's eyes went wide. The red sheep immortal grass. Even as a former empress who had seen every treasure in the world over 100,000 years, she was stunned. She had never seen a specimen this perfect. It was pure, without a single impurity. If this appeared in the outside world, ancient sects would go to war over it. The ground would be buried in corpses just for one leaf. It was a miracle for body tempering. More importantly, it contained extreme fire essence, which could be used to birth a heavenly sun flame. Just a small piece could change a cultivator's destiny forever. But I wasn't looking at the grass. I was looking at the air around it. A thick layer of golden light swirled near the plant. Asterisk ding. You have discovered Eternal Chi. Please move within 1 meter to absorb, Asterisk. I cheered internally. My guess was right. The eternal chi was drawn to rare treasures. The more precious the item, the more likely eternal chi would gather there. This was perfect. The golden light was basically a GPS for legendary loot. Not only that, but the Dao luck in this spot was incredibly dense, equivalent to the 12th level of hell. I could perform a massive sign-in here. That's the red sheep immortal grass, Lichinsi said, assuming her clueless brother wouldn't know what it was. It's very rare. It can help birth a flame seed and strengthen your body. Stay behind me. Treasures this valuable are always guarded by beasts. She was cautious. At our current age and strength, a fight with a high-level guardian beast could be fatal. Despite her cold attitude, she was clearly worried about my safety. We'll approach slowly, she whispered. If there's danger, we run. If it's clear, we take it. Understood. Got it, I replied, nodding. We crept forward. Lichinsi stayed in front, shielding me. Suddenly, the bushes nearby began to rustle violently. Shhhhhhhh. A massive serpent, as thick as a tree trunk and 30 feet long, slithered out from the undergrowth. It moved with terrifying speed, coiling its body around the red sheep immortal grass and hissing at us. I froze. I looked at the serpent's head. There was a silver protrusion right between its eyes. That's a silver flood dragon, Lichinsi hissed, her voice trembling slightly. This wasn't just a snake. It was a dragonkin on the verge of transforming into a true dragon. It wasn't quite a divine beast yet, but it was far beyond what 2 3-year-olds could handle. The dragon didn't attack. In this domain, beasts usually left humans alone unless provoked. Li Heng, we have to go, she whispered, her face full of regret. It's too strong. We can't win. In the god domain, opportunities were everywhere, but without strength, they were just beautiful scenery you couldn't touch. Why leave? I asked, staring at the dragon. I swallowed hard, but not out of fear. I bet dragon meat tastes amazing. In my past life, I had heard that dragon meat was a legendary delicacy. I never had the strength to hunt one back then, but now, a flood dragon was right in front of me. It would have to do. What are you doing? Lichinsi hissed, swatting my shoulder. This is no time to think about food. We need to leave before we provoke it. If you die in the god domain, you stay dead. There are no do-overs here. You go ahead, I said, eyes locked on the beast. I have a way to handle this. I wasn't just staying for the meat. I needed to get close to absorb the ancient chi and the Dao rhyme. I couldn't just walk away from an opportunity like this. I took a step forward and flicked my wrist. A ball of golden flame erupted from my palm. The temperature in the clearing skyrocketed instantly. The surrounding plants began to wither and char, while the red sheep immortal grass glowed with a frantic red light. The silver flood dragon sensed the terrifying heat and its eyes widened. It turned to flee, but it was a crawler, and my fire was a projectile. I flicked a finger. A tiny spark of golden flame shot out like a bullet. It streaked through the air and hit the dragon right in its weakest spot, its rear vent. The flame bored into the dragon's body. The beast let out a silent, agonizing scream, thrashing wildly on the ground. Its silver scales turned to dull, glowing red as steam hissed from its pores. The struggling grew weaker and weaker until the dragon finally slumped, motionless. A rich, savory aroma filled the air. I sniffed the wind and swallowed hard. It smelled incredible. The 9-yang divine fire was even better than I imagined. In this world, flames were ranked. Spirit fires were for mortals, useful for alchemy and basic combat, but divine fires belonged to the higher realms. They could incinerate anything. Since the silver flood dragon hadn't reached the level of a divine beast yet, it stood no chance. One touch was all it took to cook it from the inside out. Such powerful divine fire. Lichinsi muttered. She stood frozen, staring at the charred carcass. She knew I was talented, but seeing a 3-year-old effortlessly delete a creature that powerful left her speechless. She realized I hadn't just gotten lucky. I had targeted the beast's only weakness to ensure it couldn't escape. Even as a former empress, she had to admit that my 9-yang divine fire was terrifying. She started piecing things together in her head. She figured I must have received the 9 luminaries' blessing, a phenomenon so rare it was practically a myth. It explained the fire. Then she thought about her own cultivation. She suspected I had stolen her spirit jade marrow, but even that shouldn't have been enough to complete my eternal immortal demon physique. Did he find other treasures? She wondered. Wait, that dream. She remembered a night in the womb where she thought she drank immortal fetal dew. She had assumed it was a dream, but her body had grown incredibly strong afterward. Did this brat give me some of his birth treasures? The thought softened her anger toward me. If I had shared my gifts with her before we were even born, maybe I wasn't so bad after all. I waved my hand, recalling the golden flame into a special space within my dantian. I walked toward the red sheep immortal grass. As I entered the golden aura surrounding it, my body began to act like a vacuum, pulling the light deep into my pores. It felt amazing. I could feel my foundation strengthening. A notification rang in my mind. Asterisk ding. You have absorbed ancient chi. The eternal sign-in mode has been upgraded. Asterisk. Asterisk sign-in multiplier, +1. Daily sign-in limit, +1. Asterisk. I cheered internally. Increasing the multiplier was massive. If I signed in at a high-level location like the 18th level of hell and got a chaos demon pill, the multiplier would give me 2 instead of 1. For a physique as resource-hungry as mine, this was the only way to keep up. Plus, having 2 sign-ins a day meant I wouldn't waste time in places like this god domain, where we only had 3 days to explore. I stood next to the grass and triggered my first sign-in for the day. Asterisk, you have signed in at the Red Sheep Immortal Pond. Reward, 10,000-year Red Sheep Immortal Grass. Asterisk. Asterisk, eternal sign-in multiplier triggered. Extra reward granted. 1 additional 10,000-year Red Sheep Immortal Grass. Asterisk. I nearly cursed out loud. The grass growing in the ground was only 1,000 years old. In the outside world, even a 1,000-year-old herb was a miracle because beasts or humans usually picked them early. But now, I had 2 10,000-year versions in my inventory. A 10,000-year herb wasn't just 10 times better than a 1,000-year one. Its value was hundreds of times higher. My immortal demon physique required both demonic and spiritual energy to level up, and these herbs were exactly what I needed. I pulled out a small shovel and carefully dug up the 1,000-year-old grass from the dirt, roots and all, and tossed it into my storage ring. Licenzi just watched. She didn't try to stop me. I had killed the dragon, so the prize was mine. She just made a mental note to teach me how to use it later, so I wouldn't blow myself up. I climbed onto a large boulder and scanned the horizon. From this height, I could see the layout of the domain. There, I whispered. I saw a faint shimmer of ancient chi rising from a small hill in the distance. There was more in a nearby forest, and an even denser cloud swirling around a massive, 100-foot-tall tree. Ancient chi followed the best treasures. I hopped off the rock, ready to move. It was time to go hunting. I noticed a faint outline in the distance, shimmering against the horizon. My sister, Licenzi, shielded her eyes from the glare and pointed toward it. It was the silhouette of a massive building. That must be the Eternal Temple, she whispered. I could feel her excitement. According to the ancient records she'd studied, that temple held the secrets of the gods and the path to becoming an eternal great emperor. In her past life, she had reached the peak of power but failed to take that final step because her talent wasn't enough. She had spent 100 lifetimes, 100,000 years of preparation just to get here. She had even hidden her memories in the primordial universe tower to cheat death and reincarnate. All of it was for this moment. Brother, look, a palace, she said, her voice urgent. We have to go there. I looked where she was pointing. The building was shrouded in a massive cloud of ancient chi. It was far denser than anything I'd seen so far. If I could absorb that, my sign-in multiplier would skyrocket. But I wasn't in a rush. There were other pockets of ancient chi nearby, and I didn't want to leave any treasure behind. I want to check that forest first, I said, pointing to a thicket on our left. The chi coming from those trees was incredibly rich. Something big was hidden in there. The temple is far away, Licenzi argued, her mind already inside those palace walls. Don't waste time in the woods. I'm going to the forest, I insisted. It was closer. Going to the temple and coming back would be a waste of energy. She sighed, but she didn't fight me. She knew I was stronger than her now, so she had to follow my lead. Besides, she didn't want to be separated in this dangerous place. I turned and started walking toward the trees, pulling a hunk of fresh venison out of my storage. I took a huge bite, the juices running down my chin. Man, this is good, I mumbled. I really missed the days of food delivery apps, but this wild game was a close second. Lichinsi watched me, muttering something about me being a glutton, but she followed close behind. The forest was massive. The trees were nearly 300 feet tall, species I had never seen even in the most ancient texts of the upper realm. We pushed through the brush until we reached the center. There, a single tree towered over the rest, reaching 100 feet into the sky. Its trunk was thick, its leaves shimmering with a vibrant, pulsing green. The ancient tree of life, Lichinsi gasped. Her eyes went wide. This tree was a legend. It breathed in spiritual energy from miles around, concentrating it into life due hidden within its bark. Even as a former empress, she had rarely seen one this large. Stop! Don't get any closer, she hissed, grabbing my arm. The tree had a consciousness. I looked up and saw the faint shape of an old, weathered face formed in the ridges of the bark. A massive cloud of ancient chi swirled around the trunk, way more than the red sheep grass from earlier. If I could absorb this, my multiplier would jump at least 2 levels. Plus, I could sign in right at the base. But there was a catch. To sign in or absorb the chi, I had to be within 10 feet. Anything closer than 30 feet, and the tree would consider us enemies. This tree was at least 2,500 years old. It was way more dangerous than the silver flood dragon I'd just killed. It had the strength of an immortal. My 9-yang divine flame was powerful, but I was still too weak to draw out its full potential. We should leave, Lichinsi whispered. We can't handle this. She had powerful artifacts in her soul, but she'd only been practicing for 3 days. She couldn't activate them yet. Wait, I said, sitting down on a mossy rock about 60 feet away. I'm hungry. Let's rest. Now? You want to eat now? She tried to pull me up, but I sat there like a lead weight. She couldn't budge me. I took another bite of meat, but my mind was already elsewhere. I entered my internal system space. I had a plan. Deep inside my consciousness, I summoned the 9-yang divine flame. Right now, it was only a rank 1 flame. To kill a tree at the immortal level, I needed it to be rank 2 or 3. Luckily, during my sign-in at the underworld, I had received a specific treasure for this. I projected my consciousness into a volcanic region within my system. Thick smoke billowed from a crater filled with glowing, red liquid. This wasn't normal lava. It was crimson immortal magma, a high-level treasure used to feed divine flames. Go on, I told the 9-yang flame. Eat. The flame flared up, chirping with excitement, and dove into the magma. It began to feast, its heat intensifying by the second. Back in the real world, I just sat on my mossy rock, chewing slowly, waiting for my fire to evolve. I held a massive piece of deer leg in my hands, grease staining my face as I tore into the meat. I'd had the clan cooks prepare this back home specifically so I could eat on the go. Lichinsi stood beside me, cold sweat dripping down her forehead. She was losing her mind. She called me a glutton and reminded me that our time in the divine realm was limited. I didn't care. I told her to relax and offered her a bite, but she didn't have the appetite. I wasn't just being lazy. I was waiting for my 9-yang divine flame to finish its evolution. If I wanted to kill that ancient life tree, I needed more power. So, I sat on the mossy rock for an hour, gnawing on bone after bone. Deep inside my system space, the flame was gorging itself on the crimson immortal magma, growing stronger by the second. Suddenly, a rustling sound echoed through the woods. The ancient life tree was moving. Thick vines, some as wide as my arm, began to lash out like whips. They slithered toward us, bearing thorns like teeth. Lichinsi's face went white. We'd stayed in the tree's territory for too long, and now it wanted us dead. Run, she screamed. I didn't run. I squinted at the approaching vines and pushed my palm forward. A streak of golden fire shot out, forcing the vines to recoil. Chinsi had already bolted several yards away, but when she saw I wasn't following, she stopped. She actually ran back toward the danger. She used her tiny body to shield me, grabbing my wrist to drag me away. Even though she found me annoying, she was still trying to be a big sister. Your flame can't kill it, she yelled. It can only stall. We have to leave. She was right about one thing. A rank 1 flame wouldn't cut it. The 9 yang flames slammed into the tree's trunk, charring the bark, but the tree just roared. A face formed in the wood, its mouth opening to reveal a hollow void. Damned humans, the tree hissed in a gravelly, ancient voice. You won't escape. Thousands of vines erupted from the trunk, weaving together into a massive, suffocating net. They wrapped around my golden flame, forming a giant sphere of wood to snuff it out. With my fire trapped, the rest of the vines lunged at us. Chenxi's back was soaked with sweat. She reached for the divine pawn token, ready to teleport us out of the realm entirely. She didn't want to leave. She hadn't even explored the temple yet, but she wasn't willing to die here. Li Heng, get the token out, she cried. We're leaving. Right as she reached for it, a massive heat wave blasted through the forest. The sphere of vines exploded into splinters. A pillar of golden light erupted, turning the dark woods into a sea of brilliance. Chenxi froze, her eyes nearly popping out of her head. My 9 yang divine flame had evolved. It wasn't a small spark anymore. It was a foot long, radiating a heat so intense it felt like a miniature sun had landed in the clearing. The flame streaked through the air like a comet, slamming into the tree's face. The ancient bark ignited instantly. The tree shrieked as the fire raced up its branches, turning the 2,000-year-old giant into a massive bonfire. Chenxi stopped running. She just stared at the fire, her expression a mix of awe and pure jealousy. She thought I was the luckiest person alive. In the cultivation world, flames usually only evolve if you feed them incredibly rare treasures or if they undergo a crisis breakthrough to protect their master. She assumed the pressure of the fight had forced my flame to level up on its own. She had no idea I'd been feeding it immortal magma for the last hour. The tree burned for 2 straight hours. The heat was so focused it didn't even start a forest fire. It just vaporized everything within 100 yards of the trunk. When the flames finally died down, the tree collapsed into a pile of ash. In the center of the wreckage, a pool of thick, glowing green liquid shimmered. I walked over and pulled out a jade bottle, carefully collecting every drop. It was life tree liquid. I counted 20 drops in total. This stuff was priceless. For anyone below the level of an immortal, a single drop could heal any wound instantly. More importantly, each drop added 100 years to a person's lifespan. In the world of cultivation, 100 years was long enough to break through a bottleneck and cheat death. As I tucked the bottle away, I looked up. The thick, swirling clouds of eternal chi that had been trapped in the tree's canopy began to drift down toward me. The real prize was finally within reach. I looked at the charred remains of the tree and realized the eternal chi was already starting to dissipate. When a source like this dies, the energy only lingers for a few days. If I didn't act fast, it would be gone forever. I stood there for a moment, letting the golden light from the sky wash over me. It merged into my body, and a crisp notification rang in my head. I had absorbed a massive amount of eternal chi. My sign-in reward multiplier jumped by 2, and my daily sign-in limit increased by 2 as well. With my previous bonuses, I was now at a 3 times multiplier. I couldn't help but grin. If I had possessed this multiplier back when I found the Red Sun Immortal Racier, I would have walked away with 4 of those legendary plants instead of 1. Even in the ancient desolate realm, that stuff was a hot commodity. It seemed my theory was right. The older the object, the more eternal chi it held. Now, it was time for the main event. I triggered a sign-in right there at the base of the dead tree. The system chimed again. I had received 1 bottle of life tree leaves. Then, the 3 times multiplier kicked in. 3 additional bottles appeared in my inventory. 4 bottles in total. I peeked into my system space and opened one. Each bottle held 100 drops of glowing liquid. 400 drops of life-saving medicine. This wasn't just healing juice. It was a way to cheat death and extend my lifespan indefinitely. I looked back at the 17 drops of life tree liquid I had collected manually from the ground earlier. I picked up 3 drops and handed them to Chenxi. Here, I said, offering them to her. These are for you. I had hundreds of drops stashed away in my system, so I could afford to be generous. Besides, despite our constant bickering, she was still my sister. The cultivation world was a dangerous place, and I didn't want to see her die because she lacked a safety net. Chinsi looked at me, her eyes wide with genuine surprise. You're giving these to me? Thank you. For a second, the tension between us vanished. She realized that even though I was a brat, I actually cared about her. Having a few drops of this liquid was like having an extra life. The resentment she felt over the spirit jade fetus earlier seemed to soften. Should we head to the divine temple now? She asked, her voice much kinder. Wait, I said, pointing toward a small, nondescript hill in the distance. I want to go there first. I could see it clearly. That hill was glowing with eternal chi that rivaled the giant tree. Chinsi frowned, looking at the barren hill. What could possibly be over there? It looks like nothing. I'm going anyway, I told her, turning my back and walking toward the hill without waiting for an answer. Hey, wait for me, she shouted, frustrated but unwilling to be left behind. We hiked through the woods and followed a narrow path until we hit a shimmering, gray barrier. I reached out and tapped it with my finger. A ripple spread across the surface, but my hand was pushed back by a firm, invisible force. We couldn't get through. Chinsi stepped forward, looking smug as she pulled out her red divine medallion. You need this. The white medallion only lets you explore the outskirts. Silver gets you to the second zone, gold to the third, and purple to the fourth. But the red one? It opens everything, including the special hidden vaults inside the divine temple. She pressed the red medallion against the barrier. The energy parted like a curtain, creating a gap just wide enough for us to slip through. I followed her, but I used my 7-colored medallion instead. I realized then that the higher you ranked on the divine tablet, the more of this world you were allowed to see. We reached the top of the hill, and there were no monsters waiting for us. Instead, we found a small pond shimmering with a brilliant, deep blue light. Chinsi's jaw dropped. The spirit liquid heavenly pool. Are you kidding me? She looked at me like I was an alien. From a distance, this hill looked like a pile of dirt. The laws of the eternal divine realm were strange. They hid the aura of true treasures until you were right on top of them. One drop of this blue liquid was worth a month of hard cultivation. There was just one catch. You couldn't take it with you. If you put it in a bottle and left the area, it turned into ordinary water. You had to absorb it right here. As I approached the water, golden mist swirled around me. The system chimed again. The eternal chi here was even older and denser than the trees. My multiplier jumped again, adding another 3 times bonus. I was now at a 6 times multiplier. I didn't hesitate. I triggered my sign-in for the pool. The system rewarded me with a 3-meter-wide version of the spirit liquid heavenly pool. Then the 6 times multiplier hit. An additional 18 meters of pool were added to my system space. Now, inside my private system dimension, I had a pool 21 meters long. I could soak in it whenever I wanted, and the effects would transfer directly to my physical body. The pool in front of me was barely a meter wide. My version was massive. Little sister, forget the temple for now, I said, looking at the setting sun. We're staying here for the night to absorb this. Chinsi looked hesitant. You found it, so it's yours. Is it really okay if I use it? There's plenty, I said with a shrug. And we can't take it with us anyway. Don't let it go to waste. Chinsi smiled, her opinion of me shifting even further. Maybe you aren't so bad after all. She sat down by the edge of the pool and dipped her small hand into the glowing blue water. The moment her skin touched the liquid, the dense spiritual energy surged through her pores. Chinsi pulled her hand back instantly and sat cross-legged on the ground. She closed her eyes, focusing entirely on absorbing the energy. A low hum vibrated through the air, and her body jerked as a powerful aura exploded from her. I stood there stunned. She was already at the peak of the chi condensation realm. My little sister was definitely not simple. I had expected her to reach the 2nd or 3rd stage after 3 days, but this was much faster than I anticipated. Right now, she was refining her chi. Once you hit the peak, you can choose to break through to the body-tempering realm immediately, but that's a mistake. If you don't refine your internal chi first, you miss out on building a solid foundation. In ancient times, the great masters were only so powerful because they knew how to build that base. Modern techniques had simplified everything, throwing away the most important parts and leaving only the basic 9 stages. In the eternal god rankings, There was a specific list for this called the Eternal Divine Vessel rank. To even crack the top 100, you had to refine your chi at least 15 times. That was the limit for billions of cultivators. Since my sister was already working hard, I couldn't just stand around. I took a deep breath and dived headfirst into the pool. A splash echoed through the clearing. Most people wouldn't dare jump straight in because the raw energy could make their bodies explode, but I wasn't most people. The pool was deeper than it looked, about 3 meters down. I rolled up my sleeves and started scrubbing my skin with the glowing blue liquid. I had worked up a sweat back at the ancient tree of life, and I felt sticky and gross. Using legendary spiritual liquid to take a bath felt incredible. It was probably the most expensive bath in the history of the world. I sank to the bottom and sat cross-legged. Thanks to my eternal immortal physique, I didn't need to worry about breathing underwater. The liquid seeped into my 36,000 pores, and the energy exploded inside me. I directed it all into the left side of my body. This was 100 times faster than taking pills. Within moments, I hit my limit again. I broke through to the 7th stage of chi condensation. Up on the bank, Chensi was deep in her own world. She had finished the liquid she gathered and was thirsty for more. She wanted to beat me. She didn't want to fall behind, that kid, no matter what. She knew we couldn't take the water with us. So this was a competition of who could absorb the most in one night. She started using a secret immortal technique she had found in the desolate ancient realm. It was called the primordial hunter-gathering art. It only worked if you had a primordial earthworm physique, which she had perfected just 2 days ago. It allowed her to absorb energy 1,000 times faster than normal. She began stripping the impurities from her chi, compressing it into a new, purer form. She was aiming for the top of the divine vessel rank. She had prepared 10,000 years for this moment. After a while, she opened her eyes and looked around. I was gone. The clearing was silent. "Where did he go?" she muttered. She didn't see me anywhere. She figured I had probably gone to find a bush to relieve myself after eating so much earlier. She cupped her hands, scooped up a palmful of the blue liquid, and drank it down. Drinking it was even more effective than skin contact. She closed her eyes and went back to work. An hour passed. She had already refined her chi 4 times. The moon rose high in the sky, bathing the divine realm in silver light. Chensi opened her eyes again, looking worried. I still hadn't returned. "Did something happen to him?" she whispered. She tried to focus on her cultivation again, but a vision flashed in her mind. She saw me being chased by a terrifying beast, screaming for my sister to save me. Her heart tightened. Even though she tried to act tough, she had started to see me as family. We shared the same blood. She stood up, ready to head down the mountain to find me. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the pool behind her. Water sprayed everywhere like a fountain. A small figure floated to the surface. For a second, she thought I was a corpse. Then she realized I was just soaking. Her face went pale. She looked at the water, then at me, then back at the water. She realized I had been scrubbing my dirty body in the very water she had been drinking for the last hour. She dropped to her knees and started gagging. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She had been drinking my bathwater. She tried to throw it up, but the energy had already been absorbed. "You brat," she screamed. "I never want to see you again." I climbed out of the pool, feeling refreshed. I had reached the peak of chi condensation myself. Now, it was time for me to start refining. I saw her hunched over and walked over, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" I asked, sounding genuinely concerned. "Is your stomach hurting? Maybe you should drink some more of this liquid. It might help." Chensi looked like she wanted to explode. She glared at me, her face turning a shade of red I didn't know was possible. I just shrugged. If she didn't want help, she didn't want help. I turned around and jumped back into the pool with a loud splash. Chensi stood there, frozen, her hand half raised as if to stop me, completely speechless. "Why did you jump back in?" Chensi yelled, her voice echoing off the cave walls. I didn't care about getting dirty. I just wanted to absorb the energy faster. I sank back to the bottom of the pool, letting the liquid wrap around me. Chensi stood at the edge, her brow furrowed in deep thought. She hesitated, looking at the water and then at her own hands. Finally, she scooped up a handful of the spirit liquid. She didn't drink it this time. She couldn't bring herself to do it after seeing me soak in it. Instead, she let the energy seep through her palms. It was slower, but it was better than the alternative. Down at the bottom, I opened all 36,000 pores on my body. I created a terrifying suction, pulling the liquid into my veins. I began the process of refining. I pushed out the old, thin chi and replaced it with this new, dense energy. The amount of liquid in the pool didn't seem to change much, but the purity of the power inside me skyrocketed. Refining was simple, but it was a massive drain on time and resources. Everyone has a limit based on their talent. Some people can only refine their energy a few times before they hit a wall. I spent the entire night down there. By the time the sun started to rise, the pool was almost dry. I had managed to refine my energy 10 times. I was only 5 steps away from reaching the absolute limit of the eternal artifact rank. Those last 5 steps were brutal. They required several times more energy than all the previous steps combined. Chincy had been working all night too, but she had only managed to absorb 1/10 of what I had. I had basically swallowed the entire pool. As the first light of dawn hit the horizon, Chincy opened her eyes and stared at me. She looked like she was seeing a ghost. She called me a freak under her breath. Even with her immortal cultivation methods, she couldn't keep up because she couldn't physically sit in the pool like I did. Her body couldn't handle that much raw energy at once. Her meridians would have snapped. My eternal immortal demon physique was just on another level. We left the pool behind and headed toward the great temple. Along the way, I spotted 3 more spots swirling with eternal chi. I didn't hesitate, and I absorbed them all. My reward multiplier jumped from 6 times to 11 times. Finally, we reached a massive hall standing in a clearing. The walls were covered in carvings of ancient gods. I looked at one, and my consciousness was instantly pulled into a different world. I saw a god so massive he seemed to hold up the sky. Every movement he made caused the earth to tremble. His bloodline power was terrifying. I realized his physique was even stronger than mine. In the ancient era, becoming an immortal was easy because people were born with bodies that put ours to shame. My physique would have been considered average back then. But those gods were gone now. Maybe it's because humans today just don't have the physical foundation to reach that level anymore. Chincy was frozen next to me, staring at the same carvings. She had seen drawings of gods in old books, but they never had this kind of presence. These carvings felt alive. After a long time, we finally snapped out of it. Chincy pulled out her divine medallion and pushed the heavy temple doors open. A stale, ancient scent drifted out. I grabbed my own medallion and followed her inside. The moment we stepped through the threshold, a massive cloud of eternal chi rushed toward us. I stood there, letting it wash over me. A notification rang in my head. My reward multiplier jumped by another 10 times. I now had a 21-fold bonus on all my daily sign-ins. I hadn't expected the temple to hold this much energy. It felt like a container that had reached its limit and was overflowing. I had drained it, but in a few thousand years, it would probably fill up again. I needed this. My physique required an insane amount of energy to level up. If I had to rely on regular cultivation, I'd be an old man before I made any real progress. We walked down a long corridor lined with towering statues. Each one represented a different god. The pressure coming off them was immense. Legend says that if a god's statue chooses you, you receive their inheritance. Even a tiny fragment of a god's power is enough to change a person's destiny forever. But gods are picky. Most people who enter this temple leave with nothing. We kept walking until we passed a specific statue. Suddenly, the stone erupted in a brilliant light. The glow wrapped around Chincy, trapping her in place. I stopped, surprised. She was actually getting a hit. A phantom image of her physique appeared behind her. The statue reached out a stone hand and gently touched the image. The phantom transformed. What was once a simple infant shape grew into a majestic, battle-ready, immortal figure. The pressure coming off her now was suffocating. My heart skipped a beat. She had just evolved her physique into the Hongming Earth God body. Her talent had just increased by 1,000 times. She was now breathing down my neck in terms of raw potential. I felt a pang of envy. Before this, I could crush her in every category. Now, I was only slightly ahead. The light faded, and the statue returned to normal. Chincy opened her eyes. Her face lit up with pure joy. She knew exactly what had happened. She had just hit the jackpot. I watched Chincy. She turned to look at me, her eyes flashing with a sudden, smug confidence. She didn't say it out loud, but her expression told me everything. Her physique was now nearly equal to mine. She was convinced that, in time, she would surpass me and force me to start calling her Big Sister. We didn't linger. We kept walking, heading deeper into the long, silent corridor. I kept glancing left and right, my heart racing with every step. I was waiting for a reaction. I wanted a statue, any statue, to recognize me and grant me a gift. But it felt like my luck had finally run dry. We reached the very end of the hall, and not a single stone figure had blinked. I felt a sharp pang of disappointment. Chensi noticed. She shook her head slightly, clearly thinking my chance was gone. To her, reaching the end of the corridor without a hit meant I was coming home empty-handed. It was a shame, but she had her own goals to worry about. The corridor opened up into a massive, sprawling hall. In the center stood a giant statue, 100 times larger than anything we had seen before. A heavy, majestic pressure radiated from it, demanding respect. Behind this titan were two sets of closed doors. The door on the left was smaller, topped with a golden plaque that read, Eternal Library. The door on the right was significantly larger and more imposing, its plaque reading, Eternal Treasury. Chensi's eyes lit up when she saw the library. She had read in an ancient text that a specific divine book was hidden inside those walls, a book that detailed the secrets of breaking through to the eternal Great Emperor realm. If she could find it, her path to the top would be paved in gold. But getting in wasn't easy. You needed a red medallion just to open the door. As for the treasury, that was a private vault for the gods. Legend said no mortal had stepped foot inside for millions of years. Chensi looked at me one last time, feeling a bit sorry for my lack of luck despite her desire to beat me. She pulled out her red medallion, ready to head for the library. Suddenly, the air hummed. The massive statue in the center of the hall snapped its eyes open. Its pupils were like dark voids, swirling with endless divine power. Chensi caught a glimpse of those eyes and nearly jumped out of her skin. She froze, paralyzed by fear. The statue moved. It raised a massive stone arm and gently brushed its hand over the top of my head. A voice, ancient and booming like a crashing wave, echoed through the entire hall. Immortal demon physique. Eternal limit. Granting chaos divine bone. A seam opened in the statue's chest. A bone, glowing with a brilliant seven-colored light, flew out and floated toward me. It didn't stop until it pressed against my chest, slowly merging into my ribcage. Chensi was trembling. She knew exactly what that was. The Chaos Divine Bone was a supreme treasure, the strongest type of artifact in the entire immortal realm. My immortal demon physique was already terrifying, but with this bone, the gap between us hadn't just returned, it had become a canyon. All the progress she made with her evolution was wiped out in a single second. She sighed, realizing she wouldn't be catching up to me anytime soon. As the bone fused with my ribs, my heart began to beat like a war drum. Thump thump, thump thump. Every pulse sent a surge of power through my blood. I could actually hear the sound of a roaring ocean inside my veins. My talent had reached a level that was honestly hard to comprehend. The statue returned to its silent, frozen state. I walked up to its base and noticed something else. The area was thick with Dao rime, denser than anything I had seen, even in the depths of the underworld. This was the perfect spot. I didn't hesitate. I triggered my sign-in. System sign-in. Asterisk ding. You have signed in at the Eternal Divine Physique Temple. Reward. Eternal Divine Oil, Grade 7. Multiplier active. You have received 21 extra bottles of Eternal Divine Oil. Asterisk. Divine Oil? The name made me do a double take. I had a few jokes fly through my head, but I quickly checked the description in my system space. This stuff was no joke. It was condensed from the aura of the Myriad God Mountain. It took 10,000 years just to form a single drop. It was the ultimate tool for tempering the body. I pulled out a palm-sized jade bottle and popped the red cap. A golden liquid shimmered inside. One bottle held about 100 drops. That meant one bottle represented 1,000,000 years of condensation. Thanks to my multiplier, I now had 22 bottles. That was 22 million years worth of divine essence. Even with all the treasures I already had, This felt like a massive win. Chincy eventually gathered herself and walked to the library doors. She placed her red medallion into a slot, and the heavy doors groaned open, releasing an ancient, musty scent. She stepped inside, passing through a faint shimmering barrier. I followed right behind her, holding my 7-colored medallion. The barrier didn't even push back. It recognized my higher tier pass and let me through instantly. The library was staggering. Rows upon rows of bookshelves stretched into the shadows. Usually, a person could only pick one book to take with them. This was why Chincy had been so desperate for the top spot on the rank. Only the number 1 rank got the red medallion needed to enter this place. She started scanning the titles immediately. I wandered over to a nearby shelf and picked up a book titled 9 Tripod God Refining Method. It was a technique for leveling up a physique. Useless to me, I muttered, putting it back. I picked up another, returning to the source longevity art. Maybe for some old man, I thought. I'm way too young to worry about dying. I kept moving, browsing through dozens of shelves until I found something that actually caught my eye. Blood-induced God summoning. The technique allowed a user to use their bloodline power to summon a phantom of a god. The stronger the bloodline, the more powerful the god. I looked at my hands. Between my physique and my new bone, my bloodline was my greatest weapon. This was exactly what I needed. This technique allowed me to use my bloodline to summon a god to fight for me. The stronger my bloodline, the more terrifying the god. It was perfect. I tucked the book under my arm and looked over at my twin sister. Chincy was still wandering, eyes darting between the endless rows. She looked overwhelmed. I decided to help her out. I reached onto a nearby shelf, grabbed a random volume, and waved it in front of her face. I think this one suits you, I said. She glanced at the title, and her face turned beet red with rage. The book was titled Cultivating the Mind and Nurturing the Spirit. Your temper is way too short, I teased, shaking the book. Practice this and calm down. Maybe then you'll find a good family to marry into one day. My sister, the former great emperor, actually let a curse word slip under her breath. Look at you, I tooted. So young and already using such foul language. I shoved the book into her arms, telling her it was for her own good. She ignored me, turning away in a huff. But then, her eyes caught something in a dusty, neglected corner. She froze. There was a yellowed, ancient book sitting there, the new scripture of the eternal great emperor. I saw her movements sharpen. She grabbed it instantly and shoved it into her storage bag. I caught the title too, and my heart skipped a beat. In the legends, there was a rank even higher than a standard great emperor. It was the eternal great emperor. Since ancient times, the emperor realm was the limit. No one had reached the eternal level for ages. I suddenly felt a surge of greed. If I was going to live this life, I needed to plan ahead. Hey sis, I said, putting on my best innocent smile. Can I see that book? No, she snapped. She didn't even look back. She had what she wanted and headed straight for the exit. Just one look, I called out, chasing after her. It was useless. She had already tucked it away where I couldn't reach it. She stepped through the barrier and vanished from the library. You could only take one book out, even if it was in a storage bag. I sighed. She was stingy, but I'd find a way to get my hands on it later. I walked back toward the center of the hall. Chincy was waiting near the exit, ready to crush her red medallion to leave this realm. Wait, I said, pointing to the massive, ornate wooden doors on the opposite side. I want to see what's in there. You can't get in there, she said flatly. That's the treasure hall. I've never heard of anyone entering it. They say only the gods who live here can pass. I didn't listen. I walked up to the heavy doors and pressed my 7-colored medallion into the central groove. Creak. The massive doors groaned and swung inward. A wave of ancient, suffocating power rolled out, hitting us in the face. Chincy's jaw dropped. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. What? The 7-colored medallion lets you into the treasure hall. She couldn't believe it. This place held treasures gathered by gods, items that couldn't be found anywhere else in the 3 realms. I was already powerful, but if I got a divine treasure, I'd be unstoppable. I stepped through the barrier easily. Chincy tried to follow, but the moment she touched the shimmering air, she was violently thrown back. The red medallion wasn't enough. She was stuck outside, unable to even see what was happening within. Inside, my eyes widened. The place was a gold mine. Right by the entrance, a golden, lingji-like plant sat on the floor. It was over 10 feet long and pulsed with spiritual energy. Golden glow immortal Reisher, I whispered. A plant this size took at least 10,000 years to form. And here it was, just lying on the floor like trash. A message flashed from my medallion. Because I held the 7-colored tier, I could pick 3 treasures. In the library, I only got 1 book, but here, I got 3. I looked around, wondering why I couldn't sign in here. I figured the Tao rhyme of this place was all concentrated in the main statue outside. That single sign-in had given me the eternal divine oil, which was arguably more precious than anything in this room. Still, I wasn't going to be picky. I chose my 3. The golden glow immortal Reisher, the profound heaven immortal deer, and the fortune-clad pagoda. When I walked back out, Chensi was pacing like a caged animal. She rushed over the moment she saw me. Little brother, what did you get? Tell me. I raised an eyebrow, deciding to mess with her a little and cover my tracks for the future. There were so many things. I picked 10 treasures. 10. She gasped so hard I thought her lungs would collapse. To her, 1 treasure from this haul was worth 10 from anywhere else. If I had 10 of the best items in existence, my growth would be terrifying. Her expression shifted from shock to deep concern. Listen to me, she said seriously. Do not show these to anyone. There's an old saying, an ordinary man is innocent, but carrying a treasure makes him guilty. People will kill you for these. Our family is safe, but the world outside is dangerous. I nodded. I wasn't a kid. I knew how to keep my mouth shut. We both crushed our medallions and felt the world dissolve. We were leaving the god domain. Meanwhile, in a hidden corner of the longevity realm, there was a place that made even the strongest cultivators tremble, the hidden demon cave. A bone-chilling wind howled through the tunnels like a dying ghost. Deep inside, there was a mountain of white bones, beasts and humans alike. A dark shadow descended from the ceiling, kneeling before the pile of bones. Lord Ghost King. The mountain of bones began to shift and crack. A massive, 10-foot-tall dark figure crawled out, its eyes glowing with a blood-red light. Lord Ghost King, you have finally returned, the old bone demon hissed. 30 years ago, the Red Moon Ghost King had been cornered by cultivators and sealed away. Now, the nightmare was waking up. The Red Moon Ghost King had barely escaped with a single strand of his soul. To bring him back to life, the old bone demon had spent years slaughtering 100,000 living beings, piling their corpses into a mountain of white bones just to feed the Ghost King's hunger for souls. It worked. The Red Moon Ghost King cracked his neck, his voice sounding like dry gravel rubbing together. He laughed, a cold, rasping sound. Those righteous cultivators probably thought he was dead, but not only was he back, his strength had actually increased. He was now at a level equivalent to a human in the void transformation realm. Only the top-tier, first-grade sects had masters strong enough to face him. My lord, the old bone demon hissed, bowing low. You have just returned. I suggest you take over a human body to use as a puppet. It will keep the cultivators from sensing your presence so easily. The Ghost King nodded slowly. He remembered how he'd been cornered last time because he was too reckless. Do you have a live one? I prepared one just for you, the demon replied, his voice full of envy. A lesser demon dragged an old man into the depths of the cave. The old man was battered, his breath shallow and ragged. He had been caught scouting near the cave a few days prior. The Ghost King inspected the body and smiled. The old man's cultivation was decent, and his physical frame was sturdy. Who is he? The Ghost King asked. Does he have a family or a sect? Possessing someone with status is far more useful than a nobody. The old bone demon spat in frustration. The old man's mouth is like iron. He wouldn't talk. It doesn't matter, the Ghost King said, his eyes burning with ghostly fire. Once I swallow his soul, I'll know everything. He reached out, his power swirling. Human, swear your loyalty to me. The old man looked up and spat a mouthful of blood. Even in death, I will never serve a monster like you. He raised a hand to crush his own skull, but the old bone demon moved faster, pinning his arms. The Ghost King turned into a streak of black smoke and lunged into the old man's forehead. After a brief, violent struggle, he devoured the old man's soul. The shadow vanished. The old man's eyes snapped open, glowing with a sinister red light. He licked his lips. "What a delicious soul," he muttered. He closed his eyes, using a soul-searching technique to sift through the old man's memories. Images flashed by, the things the old man valued most. One name kept appearing, the Li clan, the divine son, the eternal demon god. "Interesting," the ghost king whispered. Back at the Li estate, I was in my own room, locking every door and window. I pulled out the books I had taken from the treasure pavilion. As I flipped through the pages of the records of the eternal great emperor, my heart skipped a beat. It was just as I thought. Becoming an eternal level expert was nearly impossible. There hadn't been one in millions of years. To reach that stage, your body had to be perfect. The first step was condensing your spiritual energy. On the current eternal chi rank, the person in first place had only condensed their energy 25 times. In the history of the realm, hitting 25 was considered a miracle. No one had ever gone higher. In the room next door, my sister Chincy was staring at the same records, her brow furrowed. 25 times was the limit for most, but she wanted 30. She had gained a massive advantage in the god domain, evolving her physique into the primordial chaos emperor physique. With that, 30 times was possible. She reached into her space and pulled out a small, ancient pagoda. It looked ordinary, but it was a primordial treasure with 10 floors. She tapped the bottom level, and a jade bottle appeared in her hand. It was filled with mysterious spirit pills. "Stupid brother," she whispered with a smirk. "Without resources like mine, how are you ever going to beat me?" She swallowed a pill and began to refine her energy, feeling it grow purer by the second. Meanwhile, I was sitting at my table, stuffing my face with roasted meat. I was starving after that trip to the god domain. Once I finished my meal, I sat down on my meditation mat and took stock of my loot. My haul was insane. I had 4 bottles of life tree leaves, a literal pond of spiritual liquid, and 2 10,000-year-old sunfire branches. I also had dozens of bottles of high-level cultivation pills. But the real prizes were the 3 treasures from the secret vault, the golden glow branch, the profound heaven dew, and the spirit rhyme pagoda. I flipped my wrist, and a 7-story pagoda appeared on the floor. It radiated a thick, holy aura. This wasn't just a building. It was a cultivation sanctuary filled with endless spiritual energy. This was exactly what I needed to condense my chi. I knew the Li clan had their own secret training grounds, and I planned to visit them later to sign in and get more rewards. But for the eternal chi rank, I wanted that #1 spot. I wasn't going to test my rank until I was sure I'd win. I closed my eyes and entered my internal system space so the commotion wouldn't alert anyone outside. I started with the spiritual liquid pond I'd won. It was huge, 21 meters long, and filled with pure liquid energy. My phantom self stepped into the pond. I began to absorb the liquid, forcing my spiritual energy to compress over and over again. The liquid in the pond began to drop. My aura grew stronger, heavier. The further you go, the harder it gets. Time didn't matter in here. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. The pond was finally bone dry. A massive boom echoed in my mind. My aura exploded. 25 times. I had already tied for first place on the global rank. But I wasn't done. 25 wasn't my limit. Not even close. With all these pills and treasures left, I wasn't going to stop. Not for a single second. I wasn't just training my body. I was building a foundation that could never be broken. My next stop was the Spirit Rhyme Pagoda. Inside, the world stretched for millions of miles, and the spiritual energy was 100 times denser than the outside world. It was a cultivator's paradise. I sat cross-legged and activated the Chi attraction technique. I pulled energy from 10,000 miles around me, forcing it into my veins. The spiritual energy inside me became purer, sharper, and more concentrated with every breath. 6 months passed in what felt like a heartbeat. I opened my eyes and exhaled a cloud of murky air. My internal demonic energy was now 1,000 times stronger than when I started. During those 6 months, I didn't just refine my spiritual chi, I refined my demonic chi too. I checked my progress. My spiritual chi had been refined 35 times. My demonic chi was at 32. 36 was the eternal limit of the universe. With my eternal immortal demon physique, reaching that limit was a guarantee. I just needed a little more time. Suddenly, a massive boom echoed from the direction of the back courtyard. I narrowed my eyes. My little sister, Chinsi, was moving fast. She was already challenging the eternal chi rank. I stopped my cultivation and hurried toward the plaza. A massive stone tablet stood there, glowing with ancient light. The words, Eternal Chi Rank, were carved deep into the stone. At the very top, a name was already etched in light. She was using her alias again, Musi. The rankings were clear. First place, Musi, 32 refinements. Second place, Yi Fan, 25 refinements. Third place, Wang Heng, 24 refinements. The Li clan members gathered around the tablet were losing their minds. They were screaming with joy, shouting that the Li clan had finally won. A 32-fold refinement was unheard of. The previous record holder, Yi Fan, had held the top spot for 8,000 years with 25 refinements. Chinsi hadn't just beaten him, she had crushed him by 7 levels. This was a feat that would be written into the history books forever. The sky hummed, and a pillar of red light descended. Inside the glow was a world-class treasure. The clansmen watched with envy, knowing that this reward would make Chinsi's future limitless. Some ranks rewarded you with access to divine pools, but the Chi rank gave you physical treasures. The light faded, leaving a celestial herb in Chinsi's hand. The fragrance was so thick it made everyone's spirits vibrate. It was a 10-extinction celestial grass. Even in the higher realms, a 1-foot-tall stalk was rare and took 1,000 years to grow. The one in her hand was 3 feet long, at least 3,000 years old. If this appeared in the outside world, entire sects would go to war over it. I walked toward the edge of the plaza and watched the red glow. But I saw something the others didn't. Wrapped around that red light was a thick, golden mist. It was the eternal chi I had seen in the divine realm. I realized then that these treasures came from the eternal divine realm. They absorbed that ancient energy over thousands of years and carried it with them when they were summoned. But once they hit the air, that energy started to dissipate. I ran over to Chinsi as fast as my small legs could carry me. As I got close to the herb, the golden mist swirled toward me, sinking into my skin. A notification pinged in my mind. I had absorbed the eternal chi. My sign-in rewards were now boosted 6-fold, and my daily sign-in limit increased by 6. I couldn't help but grin. I was literally piggybacking off my sister's success. It was an unexpected win. I made a mental note. Whenever Chinsi was about to break a record, I had to be standing right next to her. Chinsi saw me staring at her herb with a wide smile. She looked terrified, clutching the grass to her chest as if I were a bandit. She told me to forget about it, claiming it wasn't even that valuable while simultaneously hiding it in her storage space. I just raised an eyebrow. I didn't need her grass. I had already taken the real prize. She huffed, asking me how many times I had refined my chi. She challenged me to test myself right then and there. Why would I tell you? I asked. I was at 35 refinements. If I tested now, I'd lock in my score before reaching the limit. The rank only rewarded you for your first official test. She took my silence as a sign of defeat. She laughed, thinking I was too embarrassed to show a low score. She told me I'd never have a chance to beat her again. I reached up and ruffled her hair until it was a messy bird's nest. Don't get too happy, I said. Enjoy that #1 spot for a few days. You'll be crying soon enough. I turned and walked away without looking back. Meanwhile, far away in the Phoenix ancient kingdom, an old woman lay dying in a red palace. This was the heavenly Phoenix ancestor. Her breath was weak, her life force fading. Standing by her bed was Jean Fenger, the kingdom's princess. She had the rare Phoenix bloodline and was the heir to the throne. The ancestor told her that her time was up, but Jean Fenger refused to accept it. She had heard the Li clan possessed a longevity medicine that could extend life. Even though the Li clan rarely shared their treasures, Jean Fenger vowed to get it, no matter the cost. Back at the Li clan, I headed to the profound spirit secret realm. It was a small, isolated space filled with energy perfect for anyone below the profound core realm. The deeper you went, the stronger the energy got. A young genius named Li Yang was currently training in the core zone, enjoying the tenfold energy boost. He heard footsteps and looked up. A 3-year-old child was standing by a small tree. Liang froze. He recognized me instantly. It was the Son of God. He immediately stopped his cultivation, wondering what I was doing in a place like this. Liang cupped his hands and bowed deeply to me. "Greetings, Son of God," he said, his voice full of respect. I looked around the core area of the profound spirit secret realm and frowned. This was supposed to be the best spot, but the spiritual energy felt incredibly thin. After training in the Spirit Rhyme Treasure Pagoda with its 100-fold concentration, this place felt like a desert. "Is the energy always this weak here?" I asked. Liang looked embarrassed. "Weak? This area has 10 times the energy of the outside world. I can't even imagine what kind of environment you're used to if this counts as thin." He quickly stepped aside, offering me his cultivation spot. "Son of God, would you like to train here? This is the prime location." I shook my head. "Forget it. There's no point in absorbing energy this diluted." I looked toward a specific spot nearby. My senses picked up a node where the Tao luck of the entire secret realm converged. That was my target. Liang retreated a step, his face darkening slightly. He clearly thought I was being arrogant or had impossibly high standards. He looked frustrated, but he didn't dare say a word to me. I walked past him and stood next to an ancient stone gate. In my mind, I whispered the command, "Sign in." A notification chimed in my head. "Ding. You have signed in at the Profound Spirit Secret Realm. You have obtained the Profound Spirit Pagoda. Reward multiplier triggered, 27x increase. You have obtained the Tianyuan Pagoda. The original reward, the Profound Spirit Pagoda, only held a small space filled with energy. But the Tianyuan Pagoda was different. It contained a massive internal space spanning 100 miles, packed with incredibly dense spiritual energy." I nodded to myself. The eternal sign-in mode was terrifyingly efficient. Without that multiplier, I would have walked away with a decent treasure. Now, I had something truly rare. It wasn't quite on the level of the treasures in the myriad ancient vault, but it was close enough to be a massive win. I had what I came for. I didn't plan on staying to cultivate, so I turned to leave. Suddenly, the sound of a broom hitting the floor echoed through the core area. An old man in a gray robe appeared out of nowhere. He was sweeping the ground, but his eyes weren't on the dust. He was scanning the area, searching for something. When his gaze landed on me, his eyes turned sharp, like a hawk spotting its prey. He moved faster, his broom kicking up clouds of dust and dead leaves. I watched him closely, my brow furrowed. Something was wrong. I had 1,000 years of experience as a sweeper in my past lives. I knew how a person looked when they were actually working. This old man wasn't sweeping. He was hunting. There was a thick aura surrounding him. It wasn't just killing intent. It was the stench of death. It smelled like something that had been rotting in a grave for a long time. Ha ha. The old man's mouth twisted into a stiff, unnatural grin. "Sharp kid, once I swallow your demon chi and drink your blood, I'll turn you into my finest puppet. It's rare to find such a perfect specimen." He was only 30 feet away now. With a flick of his wrist, he hurled the broom at me like a spear. "Who are you? How dare you attack the Son of God?" Liang roared. He lunged forward, covering the distance in an instant, and kicked the broom midair. The wood shattered into splinters, raining down on the grass. "You dare interfere with my business?" The old man's face was suddenly covered in a layer of black mist. His pupils vanished, replaced by 2 flickering clusters of ghostly blue fire. Liang froze the moment he saw those flames. His body went rigid with terror. "Ghost fire. You're the Red Moon Ghost King." It was clear now. The old man was already dead. The Ghost King was just wearing his corpse like a suit, and he was here to assassinate me. "Shut up, brat," the Ghost King hissed. He didn't want to make a scene. He thrust his palm forward, and a cloud of black gas transformed into a pair of massive spectral hands that clamped around Liang's throat. Liang struggled, clawing at the air, but he couldn't break free. Panic filled his eyes. We were trapped. The Ghost King was too powerful for us. Ha ha ha. The Ghost King let out a bone-chilling laugh as he walked toward me. "Little boy, offer your life to me." He exhaled a thick cloud of ghostly mist, wrapping it around my body like a shroud. I stood there, trapped in the darkness, but I wasn't afraid. You think this weak mist can hold me? I asked. I released a single thread of my pitch-black demon chi. The moment it touched the ghostly mist, the mist recoiled as if it were terrified. My demon chi tore through the shroud with ease. The Ghost King's eyes flared with shock. Such pure demon chi. Even as a Ghost King, his energy had to be refined over centuries to reach a high level of purity. Yet my energy, at my current level, was already purer than his. Your demon chi is condensed to this degree? The Ghost King's excitement grew. Interesting. Offer all of it to me, and I might leave your corpse in one piece. He swung his arms, sending a massive wave of ghostly energy crashing toward me. Devouring demon art, I shouted. I moved my hands into a series of rapid seals. The surrounding ghostly energy didn't hit me. It was sucked into my body, instantly refined into my own spiritual energy. That's it, I taunted. Not enough. Give me more. What kind of technique is this? The Ghost King panicked, trying to pull his energy back. He had spent centuries refining that power. It was his. No one should have been able to just take it. But I was stripping it away from him like it belonged to me. If you won't give it to me, I'll just take it, I said. I pushed the devouring demon art to its limit. The old man's corpse began to shake violently. Black smoke poured out of his eyes, nose, and mouth, being dragged into the vortex I had created. It felt like his entire soul was being ripped out. Li Yong dropped to the ground, gasping for air as the spectral hands vanished. He stared at me in disbelief. A 3-year-old was pushing a Ghost King into a corner. You little monster, the Ghost King screamed. He realized he couldn't play around anymore. If he didn't end this now, he'd be drained dry. Boom! The old man's body exploded into fragments. A massive, 30-foot-tall ghostly shadow rose from the remains, looming over the clearing. My devouring technique lost its grip on a form this powerful. I've changed my mind, the Ghost King roared. I'm going to tear you into 8 pieces and feed you to the dogs. Li Yong collapsed in terror, backing away on his hands and knees. The clan leader, someone save us. But the secret realm was for low-level disciples. No experts were nearby. By the time anyone sensed the disturbance, we'd be dead. Die. The Ghost King lunged. I didn't flinch. I bit my finger and squeezed out a single drop of pitch-black blood. Blood Shadow God statue. The drop of blood exploded into a massive cloud of black mist. It expanded upward, towering 1,000 feet high, taking the shape of a terrifying demon god. It held a massive trident, its eyes glowing crimson, and demonic flames burned beneath its feet. The entire secret realm trembled as the overwhelming pressure of a true demon god filled the air. Disciples training throughout the secret realm felt the sudden surge of demonic energy. They collapsed to the ground, paralyzed by pure terror. Even the Red Mountain Ghost King shuddered. The ghostly fires in his eyes flickered with dread. He stared up at the towering figure I had summoned, his voice trembling. A demon god? How could a brat like you summon a demon god? He backed away, gasping for air under the crushing gaze of the entity. I didn't say a word. This technique was one of the rewards I had pulled from the Eternal Temple, and it was perfect for me. It only cost a single drop of blood to activate. The stronger my bloodline, the more powerful the summon. My demon god stood 1,000 feet tall. The Ghost King, at a mere 100 feet, looked like a helpless infant in comparison. The demon god raised a massive foot and brought it down with the force of a collapsing mountain. Boom! A horrific, blood-curdling scream echoed from beneath the heel. The Ghost King's mind finally cleared, but it was too late. If he had known I was this terrifying, he never would have dared to ambush me. This wasn't a fight, it was a suicide mission. The demon god ground its foot down, increasing the pressure. The screams grew more pathetic, fading into a gurgle until the Ghost King's aura vanished completely. He was erased from existence. Li Yong sat on the ground nearby, his face pale, looking like his brain had scrambled from the shock. He stared at me as if I were the monster. This was a Ghost King, a creature that made babies in the Qingzhou region cry just by hearing its name. 4 or 5 major sects had teamed up to kill him before and failed. Now, he was dead at the hands of a 3-year-old who had just started his cultivation. Whistling sounds cut through the air as a dozen powerful figures streaked toward us. My father, Li Hongtian, led the group on a flying sword. When he saw the massive demon god looming over the clearing, he nearly fell off his sword in fright. Where did this demon god come from? He roared, drawing his weapon. How dare you harm my son? Die. He was about to launch a strike when Li Yang scrambled up, waving his arms frantically. Clan leader, wait. Stop. The godson summoned that thing. My father froze midair. He retracted his sword and landed beside Li Yang, his eyes wide. You were here. Tell me exactly what happened. Li Yang explained everything, his voice shaking. As the story unfolded, my father's face turned from shock to pure fury. The Red Mountain Ghost King dared to target my son? He deserved to die 1,000 times over. He looked up at the demon god, realizing that even he wouldn't have been a match for it. He turned to his guards, his voice cold. Search the area. Interrogate everyone. If there's a mole or anyone suspicious, bring them to me immediately. The incident had shaken him. He wasn't going to take any more chances with our safety. Later, I retreated into a unique pocket dimension. In the center of this world floated a 1,000-foot-tall pagoda with 10 levels. Rich spiritual energy poured from the windows. I sat cross-legged nearby, circulating my technique to absorb the energy from the Tianyuan pagoda I had won earlier. The spiritual energy in my body grew more refined with every breath. I pushed it through 36 cycles of compression. Boom. I had reached the eternal limit of the body refining realm. Reaching the god rank at this limit meant the rewards would be even more legendary. I had delayed my breakthrough because I needed to refine my demonic energy to the same level. Once both reached 36 cycles, I would be unstoppable. 3 days passed in a flash. Guests from the ancient Phoenix City arrived at the Li clan estate. In the main hall, maids served top-tier spiritual tea. The guest of honor, Ancestor Tian Feng, held her cup with trembling hands. She took a small sip and sighed, her voice sounding ancient and weary. Xuanya spiritual tea. I'm afraid I won't have the chance to taste this again, she said. My father shook his head sadly. Heaven favors the kind, Ancestor. Perhaps you'll find a breakthrough in the coming days. I've been stuck at this level for 5,000 years, she replied peacefully. I've accepted life and death. My only regret is these youngsters. She pointed a withered hand at the 4 youths standing behind her. I hope Clan Leaderly can look after them when I'm gone. My father nodded solemnly. Our clans have always been close. We will support each other. The Ancestor looked relieved. She leaned back, her gaze falling on me and my sister, Chinsi, who were sitting nearby. So these are the godson and goddess. I've heard the rumors, but seeing you in person, truly extraordinary. Even in her old age, she could sense the surging bloodthirst and power in our veins. We looked like toddlers, but we had the physical strength of cultivators who had trained for decades. She turned to her disciples, 2 boys and 2 girls around 20 years old. You 4, go and pay your respects. Among them was Lu Yuchen, a young man with a proud expression. He looked annoyed. He was a prince of the Phoenix Kingdom. Why should he bow to a 3-year-old? To him, we were just kids being spoiled by a powerful family. It was embarrassing. The Ancestor frowned and hurried them along. She knew what she was doing. The world was changing, and she wanted her successors to be on good terms with the 2 people who would undoubtedly rule the future. Jean Fenger, the Ancestor's closest relative, was the first to move. She walked up to Chinsi and bowed gracefully. Jean Fenger greets the goddess. Chinsi didn't even lift her eyelids. She just gave a tiny, regal nod. Given her past life as an empress, a girl like this bowing was only natural. Jean Fenger then walked to me and repeated the bow. Jean Fenger greets the godson. I was busy chewing on a piece of fresh venison and just gave a muffled grunt in response. The other 3 followed suit, though Lu Yuchen's face was turning purple with suppressed rage. He hated our arrogance. After the greetings, Jean Fenger hesitated before reaching into her storage ring. 10 rare treasures appeared in the center of the hall, spirit herbs, enchanted swords, and high-grade pills. What is this? My father asked. Clan Leaderly, I have a request, Jean Fenger said, looking at the frail Ancestor. I want to find a long-life herb for my Ancestor. These herbs could extend the life of even a dying person. But the Ancestor stood up slowly, shaking her head. Fenger, stop. My potential is spent. Even another 1,000 years would just be a struggle in the dark. Save these treasures for your own path. What's the point? The ancestor sighed, her voice heavy with exhaustion. No, ancestor. You can definitely break through again. Jean Fenger insisted, her eyes flashing with desperation. Put those treasures away, the heavenly phoenix ancestor said, her voice trembling with emotion. The strain was too much. She began to cough violently, her body shaking until her wings went limp and she collapsed onto the floor. Ancestor! Jean Fenger screamed, lunging toward her. My father, Li Hongtian, moved quickly. He placed 2 fingers on the old woman's wrist, checking her pulse. After a moment, he let out a breath of relief. Her vital energy is dangerously low, and she got too excited. She just fainted. It's not fatal. He looked up at the servants. Take the heavenly phoenix ancestor to a guest room to rest. As they carried the old woman away, Jean Fenger watched them go, her resolve hardening. She turned back to my father. Clan leaderly, I beg you. Please grant me a long life herb. I'll give you everything I have for it. A single long life herb could add 1,000 years to a person's life. Jean Fenger was one of the heirs to an ancient kingdom, and these 10 treasures were her entire life savings. Lu Yuchen looked at her, his face pale with anxiety. Fenger, he whispered through a private voice transmission, those treasures were given to you by the organization. You need them for your own cultivation. The ancient kingdom was a coalition of different clans. They weren't blood-related. Lu Yuchen clearly had feelings for her and hated seeing her throw her future away. Jean Fenger didn't even look at him. She just shook her head. My father glanced at my sister, Chinsi. He might have been the clan leader on paper, but the real power lived in the ancestral land. If the elders there said yes, we could give the herb away for free. If they said no, no amount of treasure would change that. Chinsi looked at the items on the floor and spoke with a voice like ice. These things are worthless. They don't even come close to the value of a long life herb. Jean Fenger flinched. She hadn't expected her most prized possessions to be dismissed as trash. Lu Yuchen grabbed her wrist, his face darkening. Fenger, let's go. These Li family people are all arrogant and look down on everyone. We shouldn't waste our time with them. No, I have to save her, Jean Fenger cried. The ancestor had raised her and named her the primary heir. She wouldn't be where she was today without her. She dropped to her knees in front of my father, the sound of her knees hitting the floor echoing through the hall. Clan leaderly, these 10 treasures are all I have. But I promise, when I become the ruler, I will pay back everything I owe. Please, I beg you. She slammed her forehead against the ground 3 times. Thud, thud, thud. My father nodded inwardly. In terms of character, this girl was top tier. But a long life herb wasn't a small thing. He looked at Chinsi again, but she remained silent. She had herbs, sure, but the Li family had been around for 100,000 years. We had our own dying ancestors to worry about. We couldn't just hand life-saving medicine to a stranger we just met. I'm sorry, my father said, his voice tinged with regret. Our Li family does not have any long life herbs to spare. Take your things and leave. Jean Fenger didn't move. She stayed knelt there, her body stiff, her eyes filled with pure despair. If she couldn't find it here, where else could she go? Was the ancestor really doomed? Fenger, let's go. Lu Yuchen barked, pulling her up. His voice was sharp and bitter. The Li family is massive. Why would they care if one person lives or dies? He didn't believe for a second that we didn't have the herb. He thought my father was lying. He was sick of acting humble just to be rejected. Jean Fenger looked like a ghost. She let him lead her toward the exit, her hope completely extinguished. Wait. I spoke up, my voice clear and high-pitched. I wiped the grease from the venison off my hands with a cloth and looked at the girl near the door. I have something I can trade with you. Lu Yuchen spun around, his face twisted in a scowl. What could you possibly have? The clan leader said there are no herbs. You're just a kid. Do you think this is a game? He assumed that even if there were herbs, they'd be held by the elders, not a 3-year-old. He thought I was mocking them. Yuchen, shut up. Jean Fenger snapped. She looked at me, a tiny spark returning to her eyes. Godson, do you really have a long life herb? No, I said plainly. I didn't have the herb. But I had something else. I have something with a similar effect. Lu Yuchen's face went black. He's playing with us. Let's go. We can't afford to offend the Li family, but we don't have to stay for this. I didn't argue. I just pulled out a small jade bottle and popped the wooden cork. Pop! Instantly, a massive wave of life energy flooded the entire hall. It was so thick it felt like you could breathe it in. Lu Yuchen froze mid-step. He turned around, staring at the bottle in my hand, his eyes wide. Anyone could tell just by the scent. This was a top-tier life-extending treasure. I walked to the center of the hall, holding the bottle casually. I'll trade you 1 drop of life dew for those 10 items you showed earlier. Life dew. Each drop could add 100 years of life. It was only about 1/10 as powerful as a long-life herb, but the 10 treasures she offered were worth just a little bit more than 1 drop. It was a fair trade for me, but a steal for her. My eyes were on one specific item in her pile, a gray dragon bone covered in mysterious, ancient patterns. I wanted that bone. I had 4 full bottles of life dew from my last sign-in at the ancient tree of life anyway. Trading a drop was nothing to me. Jean Fonger's pupils shrank. The tree of life usually grew in forbidden zones where even powerful cultivators died trying to reach it. How did a kid get his hands on this? Did he kill a tree? She couldn't believe it, but the energy coming from the bottle didn't lie. Godson, you're really willing to trade? She asked, her voice trembling. She hesitated for a second. She had wanted 1,000 years for the ancestor, but life dew had a special property that herbs didn't. It improved the very essence of a person's life, making it much easier to break through to the next realm. If she couldn't get 1,000 years, 100 years plus a better chance at a breakthrough was the next best thing. I'll do it, she said. I tilted the bottle and let a single, glowing drop fall. She caught it in a container, moving as if she were handling a diamond, and handed over the 10 treasures. She stared at the drop, then looked back at my jade bottle. Could I get 2 more drops? If the ancestor has 300 years and the essence refinement, I know she can break through. I plugged the bottle back up and looked at her calmly. If you can find more treasures of equal value, I'll consider it. She was pretty, sure, and her situation was sad. But I wasn't running a charity. I wasn't about to give away my best stuff for free. Jean Fonger looked down, biting her lip until it turned pale. She had already offered everything of value she owned. There were no treasures left to trade for the life dew. Lu Yuchen saw her distress and couldn't stand it. He pulled out a rare stalk of yellow silk grass, his own prized possession. Fonger, take this. Maybe it can help. She didn't even look at it. She pushed his hand away, her eyes growing firm with a sudden, desperate resolve. She walked toward me and let her knees hit the floor again. I, Jean Fonger, am willing to follow the divine sun, she said, her voice echoing through the hall. I beg you for 2 more drops of life dew. The room went silent. The 3 visitors from the Phoenix Valley Kingdom looked horrified. Lu Yuchen grabbed her shoulder, his face contorted with shock. Fonger, no. You are a princess. How can you become a follower to someone else? In their kingdom, her status was only slightly below mine. For a princess to serve a 3-year-old boy was a humiliation their entire nation would feel. Let go of me, she snapped. She had lost her parents young, and her ancestor was the only one who had ever truly cared for her. She didn't care about her dignity. She only cared about saving the woman who had raised her. My sister, Chenxi, watched with interest. She knew Jean Fonger had the Phoenix bloodline. With enough time, she would become a powerhouse. In Chenxi's mind, trading 2 drops of dew for a future top-tier general was a steal. If it were up to her, she would have agreed instantly. I rubbed my chin and looked down at the kneeling girl. You want to follow me? Honestly, your talent is a bit weak. I meant it. Having lived 2 lives, my standards were sky-high. Only someone with my sister's level of talent was truly fit to stand behind me. Lu Yuchen finally snapped. Hearing me insult his crush was the final straw. You brat. Who do you think you are to talk about Fonger like that? He didn't care that I was the divine son of the Li clan anymore. He gathered his spiritual energy, channeling it into his right arm until it glowed with a blinding light. Spirit Eagle Palm, he roared. A massive, 10-foot-tall palm made of pure energy surged toward me. It was a heavy strike meant to crush me. I didn't move. I just watched it come. I funneled my own energy into a single point and struck back. The impact was deafening. Lu Yuchen didn't stand a chance. The shockwave tore his clothes to shreds and sent him flying. His skin cracked, blood spraying across the floor as he slammed into a pillar. He was a genius in his own right, reaching the Black Core realm before the age of 20. But against me, he was nothing. Chenxi's eyes narrowed. She recognized the technique I used, but the scale was wrong. The purer the energy, the larger the palm. Mine was 3 times the size of a normal one. I walked over to the broken man and looked down at him. This is the genius talent you're so proud of? Pathetic. Lu Yuqin coughed up a mouthful of blood and slumped over, unconscious. I turned back to the princess. I like your spirit. If you can pass a test, I'll let you stay. Hope flared in her eyes. What kind of test? I waved my hand, and a 30-foot-long flood dragon corpse appeared in the center of the hall, shaking the ground. Jean Fenger scrambled back in fear. She realized the beast was dead, but the aura it gave off was still suffocating. Where did this come from? She whispered. I killed it a few days ago, I said casually, patting the dragon's head. I haven't had time to process it yet. That's your test. The room fell into a stunned silence. I was 3. How could a toddler kill a flood dragon? Even my father, Li Hongtian, sprayed his tea across the floor. He knew how strong those beasts were. He looked at me, then at my sister, probably wondering what kind of monsters he had actually fathered. I pointed at a massive claw. Cut a piece of meat from this dragon and cook it using your phoenix fire. If it tastes good, you can be my follower. Using a princess as a personal chef was the ultimate insult to her kingdom. When Lu Yuqin woke up and heard that, he turned pale and fainted again. Jean Fenger hesitated, her fists clenched. But then she thought of her dying ancestor. I'll do it, she whispered. She drew her spirit sword and swung it at the dragon's leg with all her might. Clang! The blade hit the scales and bounced off, leaving nothing but a faint white scratch. She swung again and again, but the dragon's hide was like divine iron. She was a princess, a genius, and a warrior, but she couldn't even cut a single slice of meat. Jean Fenger looked like she was about to cry. Her spirit sword was useless against the dragon's hide, and if she couldn't even cut the meat, how was she supposed to cook it? She stared at the corpse, likely wondering what kind of monster I was to have killed this thing in the first place. I didn't say a word. I just flipped my wrist, and a 3-foot-long sword appeared in my hand. Immortal energy rolled off the blade in thick waves. The hilt was carved into the shape of a realistic dragon head, its eyes seeming to track movement. I didn't use much strength. I just let the blade fall. Squelch! The massive dragon claw was severed instantly, the cut as smooth as a mirror. My father, Li Hongtian, dropped his teacup. In a flash, he was standing by the dragon's corpse, picking up the severed limb. He ran his thumb over the bone. Dragon bones are legendary for their hardness. They don't rot for tens of thousands of years. But this sword had sliced through bone and scale like they were soft tofu. Is this the Dragon Slayer's sword? My father whispered. He remembered the legends. The Dragon Slayer was a divine weapon that made any dragon creature as vulnerable as paper. It was supposed to be sealed away by the Dragon Clan ages ago. My father glanced at me, his eyes wide. He probably assumed I got it from the Eternal Treasure Pavilion when I visited the temple earlier. I let him believe it. It was a perfect cover for the treasures I actually brought back from the underworld. My sister, Chenxi, stood up from her chair so fast it nearly tipped over. Her eyes were burning with jealousy. She had once tried to break the seal on that very sword in her past life, but the Dragon Clan had been too strong for her. Now, she was watching her 3-year-old brother swing it like a toy. I ignored her. I used the sword to shave off the scales and handed a thick slab of dragon meat to Jean Fenger. I'll give you 1 hour, I said. If you can't cook this right, don't bother coming back. She flinched, nodding frantically. She looked at the sword in my hand and realized that if I turned it on her, she'd be in pieces before she could even scream. A servant led her toward the kitchen, and I pulled the dragon corpse and the sword back into my storage space. I sat back down in my chair, grabbed a handful of melon seeds, and started cracking them. An hour later, Jean Fenger returned. She was trembling as she held out a jade plate. The dragon meat was charred golden brown, glistening with a perfect layer of oil. The aroma hit me immediately. It smelled incredible. I picked up a pair of jade chopsticks and took a bite. The outside was crispy, the inside tender, and the rich dragon fat melted across my tongue. I took a few more bites and then set the chopsticks down. It's decent, I said. Did I pass? She asked, her voice small. You can stay, I replied. You're my cook now. She looked like she'd just won the lottery. It was strange to see a princess so happy about becoming a chef, but serving the godchild of the Li clan was a position most people would kill for. My father beamed with pride. He figured that since she paid 2 leaves from the Tree of Life just for the chance to serve me, we had made a massive profit. Later that day, in a guest room filled with the scent of sandalwood, the old ancestor of the Phoenix Kingdom finally opened her eyes. She sat up, stretching her limbs. She felt hundreds of years younger. Fenger, what happened? Jean Fenger smiled, holding the old woman's hand. I got 3 leaves from the Tree of Life. Your lifespan has been extended by 300 years. You have time to break through your bottleneck now. The old ancestor didn't look happy. She looked worried. Those treasures you took, they weren't enough for 3 leaves. Where did the rest come from? Jean Fenger lowered her head. I agreed to follow the Li clan's godchild. That was the price. The old ancestor exploded. She pointed a shaking finger at the girl's face. I raised you to be a powerhouse, a leader, and you threw your future away to be a servant. Ancestor, please, Jean Fenger whispered, gripping her hand. Following him, it might be the best choice I ever make. You're hopeless, the old ancestor snapped, pulling her hand away. Leave. Don't come back to see me. Jean Fenger didn't argue. She knelt and kowtowed 9 times, tears hitting the floor. This unfilial daughter can no longer care for you, she said. She took one last look at her mentor and walked out. The old ancestor just shook her head, convinced the girl's life was ruined. Meanwhile, I was back in my own room with the doors locked tight. Demonic energy swirled around me, thick and suffocating. A sound like muffled thunder echoed inside my chest. I opened my eyes, my pupils glowing with dark light. I had spent the last 6 months in seclusion, consuming demonic pills to refine my energy. I had compressed my demonic chi 36 times, reaching the eternal limit. Now, it was time to break through to the next realm. I closed my eyes and merged my spiritual and demonic energies, slamming them against the barrier of my cultivation. Boom! My aura exploded. I had reached the body-tempering realm. I could feel the difference immediately. My physical strength was already many times greater than it had been in my previous life. But the body-tempering realm was all about refining the flesh. Most people just absorbed worldly spiritual energy to do this, but that was too slow for me. My body was too strong. Basic energy wouldn't even leave a scratch. I flipped my hand over, revealing a burgundy bottle. If I wanted to reach the limit of this realm, I needed something much stronger than air. I needed the best spirit liquids in existence. I looked at the small bottle in my hand, wondering just how effective this eternal divine oil really was. There was only one way to find out. I tilted the bottle and let a single drop fall onto my palm. I rubbed my hands together, spreading the oil evenly. Almost instantly, a searing, spicy heat seeped into my skin. I could feel the muscles in my palms tightening and strengthening at an impossible speed. I quickly began applying the oil to the rest of my body. It was strange. Even though it was just one tiny drop, it felt like it could cover my entire skin with ease. My hands remained slick and oily as I worked. Then, I hit a problem. I couldn't reach my own back. To truly temper the body, the oil had to be applied perfectly to every single inch. If I missed even a small spot on my back, my inner strength wouldn't be able to break through the barrier. This oil was different from other spiritual liquids. It required total coverage. Suddenly, I remembered. I had a follower now. I'd been so busy cultivating lately that I hadn't seen much of her. Fenger, Fenger, I called out, opening my door and shouting into the courtyard. A slender, beautiful girl hurried toward me. It was Jean Fenger. Lord Sun, are you hungry? I can go prepare a meal for you, she said quickly. Since becoming my follower, she had spent most of her time in the kitchens, learning how to cook from the royal chefs. No, come inside first, I said, waving her in. Once the door was shut, I looked at her. Have you ever learned how to push oil? She blinked, looking completely lost. Push oil? I've never heard that term before. I realized I had used a phrase from my previous life. Oh, It just means rubbing oil onto the body and using pressure to make sure the skin absorbs it fully. She was smart and caught on immediately. I understand. I handed her the bottle and lay face down on the bed. Start with my back. As soon as she took the bottle and let a drop hit her hand, her expression changed. She could feel the terrifying aura coming from the liquid. The moment it touched her palm, she winced from the burning sensation. It felt like her skin was on fire. Following my instructions, she began massaging the oil into my back. As it penetrated my skin, the effect was instantaneous. It felt like a divine force was hammering my flesh into something stronger. My physical quality skyrocketed at a frightening pace. Boom. My aura surged. Body tempering level 2. I barely had time to breathe before it surged again. Boom. Body tempering level 3. The oil wasn't even close to being spent. My realm kept climbing. Level 4. Level 8. Level 14. Beside me, Jean Fonger was staring in shock. Her hands trembled as she worked. What was this golden liquid? I had only used one drop, and I had already broken through 14 times. Just like the chi condensation realm, body tempering didn't stop at level 10. The peak was just the beginning, but the resources required to go further were usually astronomical. She had never heard of a single drop of anything doing this much. I stood up and stretched, my bones popping like a series of firecrackers. The eternal divine oil was incredible. It took 10,000 years for the eternal mountain to produce a single drop of this stuff. With this, I knew I could reach the absolute limit of this realm. Fonger, keep going, I said. She nodded and poured another drop. As she started rubbing it in, I had an idea. Wait, don't you have the phoenix fire? Channel it into your palms while you rub the oil. The heat should help it absorb even better. She hesitated. Lord Sun, the phoenix fire is extremely hot. Will your body be able to take it? It's fine, I told her. Your fire can't hurt me. My body was already becoming too tough for basic flames to leave a mark. All right, I'll try, she whispered. Tell me if it's too much. She carefully ignited the phoenix fire in her hands and continued the massage. The sensation was incredible. The combination of the oil and the heat was perfect. Not only was it comfortable, but the absorption speed doubled. Boom, level 15. Boom, level 17. Boom, level 20. The second drop had pushed me through 6 more levels. Jean Fonger looked at the bottle like it was a holy relic. In such a short time, I had reached the 20th level of body tempering. She remembered her old mentor telling her that tempering went beyond level 10, but she had only managed to reach level 15 after 5 years of grueling work. She had given up after that. Again, I said, addicted to the feeling of power. She nodded, her forehead beaded with sweat, and poured a third drop. The sun set and rose again. We worked through the entire night. By dawn, I sat up and signaled for her to stop. That's enough for now. I need to let this settle. Jean Fonger walked back to her own quarters in a daze. Her entire understanding of cultivation had been shattered in a single night. 68 levels. I had tempered my body 68 times in one night. She had never even heard of anyone going past 30. The resources of her old kingdom, which she once thought were vast, were nothing compared to a single drop of my oil. She sat on the edge of her bed, her mind racing, but she couldn't sleep. Suddenly, she felt a strange heat rising in her own body. Her skin began to flush, and a fire started burning in her veins. She realized what was happening. While she was massaging me, the oil had seeped into her own palms. A full night of contact had allowed a significant amount of the divine liquid to enter her system. She collapsed onto the bed, sweat pouring off her. Her skin turned a deep red. But amidst the pain, she felt a surge of joy. She possessed the phoenix bloodline, but it had always been weak. Now, the divine oil was fueling it, forcing it to evolve. She gritted her teeth, enduring the agonizing pain of the transformation. If she could survive this, her life would never be the same. Jean Fonger's skin glowed a violent crimson. A fire phoenix erupted from her chest, tearing through the roof and soaring into the clouds. Its high-pitched cry echoed across the sky, shaking the very foundations of the Li clan. My sister, Chenxi, felt the vibration in her soul and woke up from her meditation. She looked at the phoenix phantom in shock. She recognized it immediately. That wasn't just a standard bloodline. It was the ancient phoenix bloodline, something far superior to a normal phoenix. In the upper realm, you could only awaken that at birth. She stared toward my quarters, her mind racing. What on earth had I given my follower? How could a girl's bloodline evolve so drastically in such a short time? Chincy realized then that she truly couldn't see through me anymore. I stood in the courtyard, watching the phoenix shadow fade. The eternal divine oil was even more potent than I thought. It didn't just temper the body, it influenced the bloodline itself. Jean Fenger had only absorbed a tiny amount through her palms, but for her weak bloodline, it was enough to trigger a total transformation. As for me, my physique was already at the peak. I couldn't evolve further, but my spirit condensation had reached its absolute limit. It was time. My sister had enjoyed her 6 months at the top of the rankings. Now it was my turn. I walked toward the training grounds where a massive stone tablet loomed over the plaza. This was the divine artifact rank. At the very top, the names were carved in bold letters. Musi, my sister, held the first spot with 32 condensations. Below her were names like Yi Tianfan and Wang Heng, trailing far behind. A few clan members were loitering around the stone, whispering to each other. They noted that the goddess had been at the top for half a year while the godchild, me, hadn't made a single move. They wondered if I had hit a wall. Some even suggested I hadn't even finished 15 condensations and was too embarrassed to show up. I ignored the gossip and approached the stone. Jean Fenger followed close behind me, her new aura drawing stares of admiration and jealousy from the men. They envied my luck in having a princess as a follower. I didn't care about their stares. I only cared about the eternal limit. I stood before the tablet. I wanted to see what kind of reward this stone would grant. Unlike the divine pool, this tablet bestowed opportunities directly. As I stepped forward, the air began to hum. Suddenly, a pillar of 7-colored light crashed down from the heavens, bathing me in a brilliant glow. The crowd went silent. Their eyes nearly popped out of their heads. 3 glowing orbs floated within the light. 3 treasures. When Chincy took the top spot, she only got a single red pillar and 1 treasure. This was on a completely different level. Thick strands of eternal chi swirled around the orbs. As I stood there, my body acted like a vacuum, pulling the chi into my system. My internal interface pinged. The eternal sign-in mode was reacting. My multiplier jumped instantly, hitting 57 times the normal rate. My daily sign-in limit increased by the same amount. The rewards from this rank were better than I ever imagined. I reached out and swept the 3 orbs into my system space before anyone could get a good look. Inside my mind, I saw them clearly: a golden ancient dragon egg, a shimmering immortal slaying sword, and a phoenix immortal flower. Each one of these was worth 1,000 times more than what Chincy had received. I smiled to myself. If my little sister found out about this, she'd probably die of envy. Jean Fenger stood behind me, dazed. She was completely sold on my power now. She realized that following me was the best decision she had ever made. Just then, Chincy came rushing toward the plaza. She had seen the 7-colored light and the 3 rewards from a distance. Her heart was pounding with curiosity. She walked up to me and put a hand on my shoulder, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "My dear brother," she said, trying to sound sweet. "Could you let your big sister see what treasures you got?" I looked at her and nodded. "Sure. If you really want to see them, I'll show you." I flicked my wrist, pulling 3 items from my storage ring and dropping them on the ground. Chincy's eyes widened as she leaned in to inspect them. Then, her face went completely black. On the ground lay a deer leg, a deer head, and a deer foot. "You brat, you're messing with me again," she screamed. She raised a fist and swung it right at my face. She didn't use her full strength, but she was confident. She had tempered her body 30 times. She assumed I was just a fresh spirit condensation cultivator. She thought she could teach me a lesson without hurting me too badly. My father, Li Hongtian, was standing nearby. When he saw her swing that punch, his heart skipped a beat. He knew who she really was. He was terrified that the ancestor was about to flatten his son. My father, Li Hongtian, watched with wide eyes. He was certain I was about to be crushed. He knew Chincy was already a powerhouse who had tempered her body 30 times. In his mind, there was no way a newborn like me could withstand that kind of force. He almost stepped in to help, but he hesitated. He trusted that Chinsi wouldn't actually kill her own brother. Chinsi's punch cut through the air with a sharp whistle. It was fast and heavy. I didn't panic. I simply raised my palm and met her fist head-on. Clap. The sound of the impact echoed across the plaza. Chinsi's eyes nearly popped out of her head. I hadn't moved an inch. My arm didn't even tremble. She stared at me, completely stunned. How could my physical strength be this high? She wondered if I had been tempering my body in secret too. I raised an eyebrow and gave her a teasing look. Is that all you've got, little sister? You're way too weak. What she didn't know was that I had already tempered my body 68 times. Even seasoned cultivators in the upper realm didn't have a physique as tough as mine. Chinsi's brow furrowed deep. She couldn't accept this. She figured if my spirit condensation was strong, maybe she could still beat me with raw physical power. She pulled back and threw another punch, this one aimed straight for my chest. The wind from her strike was so intense it blew my robes back and ruffled the hair on my face. The surrounding clan members gasped. They had no idea the holy daughter possessed such terrifying strength. The fist collided with my palm again. Boom. The shockwave rolled out, but I stood my ground, perfectly still. Chinsi looked up at me, her face pale with disappointment. I had caught her full-force strike as easily as if I were catching a ball. It was clear now, my strength far surpassed hers. I patted my hands together and yawned. Seriously, sister? That didn't even tickle. If you want to fight me, go back and practice for another 50 years. Chinsi's face went black with rage. She was a reincarnated soul who had spent 100,000 years preparing for this life. She was supposed to stand above everyone. Yet here she was, losing to a baby. First, she lost the divine physique rank. Then, she lost the divine artifact rank. Now, she was being completely crushed in a test of pure strength. She couldn't understand how I was doing it. She began to wonder if the treasures I got from the Hall of Eternity were even more powerful than she imagined. I didn't stick around to watch her pout. I turned to Jean Fenger and nodded. Let's go. We walked back to my private courtyard. Once we were inside, Jean Fenger turned to me with a respectful bow. Young master, the king of the Phoenix Valley Kingdom is having a birthday feast in a few days. He has always been kind to me. I was hoping you would allow me to return home to celebrate with him. I thought about it for a second and nodded. Go ahead. How long will you be gone? About half a month, she replied softly. Fine. I reached into my system space and pulled out a red brocade box. I handed it to her. Take this gift to the king for me. Consider it a birthday present from the Li clan. Since Jean Fenger had chosen to follow me, her actions represented my prestige. The Phoenix Valley Kingdom was a powerful force. Building a good relationship with them now would be useful for me later. Thank you, young master, she said, her voice trembling with gratitude. She knew that anything I gave away had to be extraordinary. One thing, I warned her. Do not open that box until you hand it to the king. She promised she wouldn't, tucked the box into her storage ring, and set off. Once she was gone, I shut my doors tight and closed my eyes. I let my consciousness enter my system space. 3 new items were floating there. The first was a 7-foot-long sword. The blade was so sharp that a casual swing felt like it could tear through space itself. I smiled. It was on the same level as my dragon-slaying sword. The Hall of Eternity really didn't disappoint. The second item was a plant. It was a foot-long phoenix flower, shaped exactly like a rising bird. A flower of this size had to be at least 10,000 years old. Even in the upper realm, this was a legendary rarity. Then, there was the third item, a large, oval egg about a foot tall. It was covered in mysterious, ancient golden patterns. It looked incredibly divine. A dragon egg. I licked my lips, feeling my mouth water. This could be a great mount if it hatches. And if it doesn't listen to me, well, dragon meat is supposed to taste amazing. I placed my hand on the shell, but my heart sank. It was ice cold. There was only a tiny, flickering spark of life inside. It made sense. This egg had probably been sitting in the Hall of Eternity for millions of years. Its life force was almost completely drained. But I wasn't giving up. I had plenty of dragon treasures I'd scavenged from the underworld. I looked around my space until I spotted a massive dragon skeleton I had stored away. That was the spot. I moved the egg over to a red pool near the skeleton. The air there smelled heavily of blood. The pool was filled with pure dragon blood. I tossed the egg right into the center. It sank to the bottom and immediately began to drink. The level of the blood dropped rapidly until the pool was bone dry. The egg shivered. The golden patterns on the shell began to glow with a soft light. The life force inside got a little stronger, but it wasn't enough. I walked further back, behind the giant skeleton, to a smaller pool. This one was different. A thick red mist hung over it. The smell of blood was hundreds of times stronger here. This was dragon essence blood. A single drop was worth thousands of gallons of regular blood. I threw the egg in again. The egg absorbed every drop in seconds. It began to shake violently, emitting a blinding golden light. Thump thump, thump thump. I pressed my palm against the shell. I could feel a tiny heart beating inside, strong and rhythmic. It was getting closer to hatching. If this were a normal beast egg, it would have exploded from all that energy, but this was something special. I kept walking through my storage space, searching for more. That's when I saw it, a bright red spirit Lingji growing from the ground. I could feel a powerful dragon aura radiating from that Lingji mushroom. It felt just like the blood from the pool, but the energy was hundreds of times stronger. This was a crimson blood Lingji. These things only grow in places where dragons have died, and judging by its size, this one was at least 3,000 years old. I knelt down, plucked the mushroom, and placed it right next to the dragon egg. The egg must have sensed the power because it immediately released a suction force, wrapping the Lingji in a faint glow. Within seconds, every drop of energy was sucked dry. The shell erupted with a blinding golden light. I pressed my palm against it and felt a surge of life. The egg was no longer dormant. It was vibrant and pulsing. It didn't need the space anymore. I could take it out and let it hatch naturally by my side. I left the system space, and a 1-foot-tall dragon egg appeared on the floor next to me. I gave the shell a playful tap. The egg shivered and emitted a brilliant golden glow, almost like it was responding to me. "Hey, little guy," I whispered. "Hurry up and hatch. I'm starting to get hungry." The egg shook violently on the floor, looking genuinely terrified. I couldn't help but laugh. The little thing wasn't even born yet, but it was already smart enough to understand a threat. With the egg settled, I turned my attention back to my cultivation. I wanted to use the eternal divine oil again. The body tempering effects were just too good to ignore, and it had already pushed my physical strength to incredible levels in record time. I pulled out the burgundy bottle and looked toward the window. "Fenger, come help me apply the oil." I waited. Silence. I slapped my forehead, feeling like an idiot. I'd forgotten that Jean Fenger had headed back to the Bone Kingdom. She wouldn't be back for another half-month. I looked at the bottle and frowned. This divine oil wasn't like regular liquid. It had to be spread perfectly even across the skin to work. If I only did my chest and missed my back, the effect would be ruined. I needed a full-body massage to knead the energy into my muscles. I needed help. Then, a thought struck me. My little sister, Chinsi, she was strong enough, definitely stronger than Jean Fenger, so her massage would probably be even more effective. I walked across the courtyard to her room and knocked. "Who is it?" Her childish voice called out from inside. "Chinsi, it's me. Let me in for a second." "No," she snapped without hesitation. "I've got serious business to talk about. Don't be like that." I didn't feel like arguing, so I just pushed the door open and walked in. Her face turned sour the moment she saw me. "You? How dare you come in without my permission?" "I told you. I have a real reason," I said, keeping a straight face. "Fine. What is it? Speak fast. Don't interrupt my cultivation." "Well, I've hit a bit of a snag with my training," I said. "I need your help." Hearing that I was struggling actually made her expression soften a little. A smug look crossed her face. "Oh, so even you run into trouble? Is the tempering speed too fast? Did you hit a bottleneck? Tell me, how can I help?" I scratched my head. "It's actually pretty simple. I need you to push some oil for me." "Push oil?" She stared at me, clearly unfamiliar with the term. "You know, give me a massage," I explained. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "You want me to give you a massage? In your dreams." She glared at me like I'd insulted her entire lineage. I would never do such a thing for anyone. People massage me, not the other way around. "Come on, Chinsi, just help me out," I pleaded. "Fenger usually does it, but she's gone." She was about to reject me again, but then her eyes narrowed. She was clearly plotting something. You really want my help? Fine. I'll do it, but only if you tell me one thing. Anything. What is it? What level is your body tempering at? I knew why she was asking. After I crushed her in our fight earlier, she was dying to know how far ahead I actually was. I didn't see any reason to hide it. All right, since you're so curious, I said. I've reached the 68th level of body tempering. The room went silent. It was like a thunderclap had gone off inside her head. Her jaw practically hit the floor. What? 68, she shrieked. Are you sure you didn't misspeak? She had been tempering her body for over 6 months and had only reached level 30. She thought she was a peerless genius, but compared to me, she was an ant. I don't make mistakes, I said. I stood up, spread my arms, and flexed. A terrifying, heavy aura exploded from my body, shaking the room. Her eyes went wide. She felt the pressure. It was real. 68 levels. How? How did you reach this level so fast? She stammered. I knew what she was thinking. She had spent 10,000 years preparing for this life. She had countless treasures, and she knew every secret method in the book. Even with all that, she was only at level 28. I wasn't just a little stronger, I was 40 levels ahead of her. It was insane. I'm just naturally gifted, I said, raising an eyebrow. I put in a little effort, and boom, this happened. You think I'm stupid enough to believe that? She hissed. The early levels were easy, but the higher you went, the harder it got. Without legendary treasures, reaching level 68 was impossible. Look, I told you the truth. Now, a deal's a deal. Get to work. I didn't wait for her to agree. I stripped off my robe and flopped face down onto her bed. You brat. Her face was red with anger. As a former empress, she was used to being served, not serving others. But she had given her word. She walked over, looking like she wanted to strangle me instead of massage me. Fine. Just one time. That's it. Wait, I said, reaching for the burgundy bottle. I pulled the stopper, and a thick, divine fragrance instantly filled the room. Chensi froze. Her eyes locked onto the bottle. That aura, what is that? I poured a single drop of the divine oil into her palm and tucked the bottle back into my storage ring. She stared at the shimmering liquid in her hand, taking a sharp breath that nearly choked her. Is this the eternal divine oil from the ancient divine mountains? She had only heard legends of this stuff in her past life. In 10,000 years, she had never even seen a drop. She never imagined her own brother would just be carrying it around in a bottle. My dear brother, she said, her voice suddenly sweet and trembling with shock. Could you tell your big sister? Where exactly did you get this?